I just got off the phone with Emma a couple of minutes ago, so I know she's coming, but it might just be taking people a second to log in.
Okay. Dell, is Dell around?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Dell. Nice to see your face.
Thanks.
Uh,
I'm here at my office in Beaverton.
Excellent. Nolan, are you here and present?
I happen to be mostly present and here.
Excellent. And then we have our ex aficionado, Dave. I think I saw you, correct?
I am here in Rainy Bend.
Ooh. It's rainy here in LeGrand too. Okay, let's
And maybe it's just
if
for
you have
the record, Andre has joined us and Emma is also here.
oh, perfect. Excellent. Um, if I could have all the ODOT and visitors, please introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you would like to make public comment, put something in there as well so that we can flag that. And then go ahead and I think I will move over to Beth. What are our meeting goals today?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm looking for them. I'm looking for my agenda. Ugh, sorry. Okay. So, goals. Well, we're going to have welcome, then public comment, then approve the meeting minutes or not. We're going to get from the division administrator, Suzanne Carlson, and from Leanne, division updates on staffing and just OBPAC business. Then community paths recap from Alan Thompson, in charge of that program. And then a break at 2:05, and then we get a legislative update from the legislative coordinator, Callie Sullivan. And then we wanted to have some information about e-bikes because I, for one, don't know much about them. And so Amanda Howell is coming to speak about that. And then we're going to update our work program, something we've been meaning to do. Then I and my my recruitment co-workers, if you will, are going to discuss what we found with recruitment, and then there will be time to have member updates from all members of OBPAC. And then the agenda build, and then we adjourn. It's a big day.
Fantastic. Roberto. Oh, wasn't wrong. I apologize. Are you done, Beth? Ah, there you go, Roberto.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is your first time joining us virtually using Zoom. Just a reminder for folks who are not advisory committee members, please keep your self on mute. At the bottom of the window, you'll see this mute button. I'll also keep an eye, make sure that there's no interruptions, and mute folks if necessary. If the bandwidth gets really slow, I'll just put in the chat room for a guest to turn off your video. Press on this symbol to turn off your camera. And for folks who need to rename themselves on the participant list, please go ahead and use this symbol here where it says participant and you're able to change your name. We will open it up to folks for any public comment for folks who wish to provide a public comment. So you can write in the chat room, which is this symbol here, or use the reaction, raise your hand if you're interested in providing a public comment. For the public comment piece, just to remind the public, we are keeping it up to 3 minutes. So if folks are providing public comment, just make sure to be brief and up to 3 minutes. And as you're addressing the advisory committee, make sure that you keep your comments respectful and abstain from any hateful or obscene language. These meetings are being recorded as part of the Oregon's public laws. So just a friendly reminder, if this is your first time joining us, I will pass it back to our co-chairs.
Fantastic. And oh, it looks like we do have a public comment. I'm going to go ahead at this point. Thank you everybody for being here. And Beth is going to take it away with the leading the public comment. So Beth, you're on.
Oh, yeah. Do we have a written public comment that came in? I don't know. Or do we have a person who wants to comment now?
There's two people waving their hands.
Okay.
One is Mr. Dave Rabinowitz, and then I saw Michael Harrison also.
Okay, great. Let me get to that. All righty, let's start with Mr. Rabinowitz. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is a comment that's not related to an item on the agenda, but it's related to bicycle policy in general in the state. I'm going to share my screen because there was recently a so-called upgrade to Highway 20 between Albany and Corvallis. And what you should see here is a picture. On the top is what they actually did. Now the picture is designed, the actual right turn lane is much longer than shows in this drawing. And traffic at this point is moving at 55 miles an hour. And so the design calls for bicycles to cross traffic while the traffic is moving at 55 miles an hour, which is extremely dangerous. And I don't do that. But a preferred design would be keeping the bike lane against the curb and actually crossing the traffic when the cars are actually turning, at which point they're going much more slowly. It's much safer, and I don't know why they designed it this way. But for future reference, I think we should be taking this into account. Thank you. If there are any questions, please ask.
Mr. Rabinowitz, this is Beth. This is something you'd like to see in the traffic code, or where would you like to go with this?
I don't know if this is a question of traffic code or if this is just the practice that they're currently doing at ODOT. But it's something, when ODOT proposes something, keep this in mind, because this is what they've been doing.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything else to say, Mr. Rabinowitz? No? Okay,
That'll
then
come.
we'll
Thanks.
move over to Mr. Harrison.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The e-bike industry is projected to reach over 100 billion by 2030. We're only going to see more e-bikes and bicycles on our streets, particularly here in Portland. I think we should have separate infrastructure for bicycles. It'd make a lot safer. My website, bikeskyway.org, has more images and video. I've been giving public testimony about this to local governments. And I'm just trying to get the concept out there. I mean, what happens when transportation agencies have to sacrifice car lanes for bicycles and e-bikes? That would infuriate a lot of drivers. So I think we should have separate elevated bicycle pathways, you know, for e-bikes and bicycles. Yeah, just check out the website when you have time, bikeskyway.org.
Okay.
It would solve, you know, a few problems this way. And I know it's a large infrastructure project, but I think it's well worth it, you know.
Okay. Is that all you wanted to say, Mr. Harrison?
Yeah.
And okay, thank you. And does anybody have any comments or want to respond to Mr. Harrison or Mr. Rabinowitz on the OBPAC? No? Oh, Emma.
Hey,
Go ahead,
Beth.
Emma.
Thank you. To the previous comment from Dave Rabinowitz about the design along Highway 20, I just wanted to note that that type of design decision would also apply to the Highway 126 from Eugene to Florence, between Eugene and Veneta more specifically. ODOT's doing some planning for that section, and there's similar context of along Straight Highway, there's wetlands involved with that one, but how is the turning movement and the safety of people on bikes being designed for and considered? I think it's important, and I'm curious if ODOT has any response as to why the decision was made this way on Highway 20, as well as what's happening, kind of what's on the books for design, what's happening going forward.
I can say I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, but we can look into the specifics of the projects that y'all are mentioning and get back to the committee with a better response.
Yeah, that would be nice, Leanne. Yeah. Any other comments on the comments?
Just real quick, can we get, so we can come back with a better response. Can we get the details of where those questions are located so that we're sure to respond to the correct spot?
So I guess my question is, why was the design done as it was on Highway 20? And what is the policy for design going forward that would apply to corridors like Highway 126 here in Lane County, as well as other similar facilities? Is that specific enough, Jenna?
We might need to get from Dave Rabinowitz where that particular turn is located.
Okay, I can tell you right now, there were 2 intersections designed that way. On Highway 20 between Albany and Corvallis, and that is at Independence Highway and at Granger Avenue.
Thank you.
On US 20 with the inside acceleration lane. Yep, I know those spots, David. Gotcha.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jenna. Jenna and I will work on a way to respond, and we'll respond back to the committee. And Dave, if you've got your contact information, then we can get back to you as well.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
All right. So somebody's going to write that down, and good. Looks like all the public comment. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Beth, there was
Leanne had something to say.
There was one written public comment that came in from Dick Dolganis out down in Roseburg. And I don't think y'all need to discuss it here, just to say like, hey, we did receive written comment. Did folks read it? And is there any OBPAC comments
Okay.
Thanks
for that
comments
reminder.
about the public comment?
I did. I got that email, and I didn't have any comment, and I think I neglected to tell you that I had no comment. But go ahead, Mavis.
My comment to that was that that is a great question, and we are working on that later today with our work plan.
All right, that's a response to Mr. Doganis. Is he
Perfect?
here today?
Okay.
No. Okay. I guess that wraps it up then. Okay. On to the next.
Perfect. Then in that case, we are on to approval of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at them in the folder. I think it was very well done and very professional. Does anybody else have any other takes on those minutes before we move to pass them? Beth.
This is a comment I had when I first started here. Could we please add all the ODOT people who attended, their titles, not just their names? It's really helpful for all us non-OBPAC or ODOT people, but especially me.
Thank you, Beth. We can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's
Like
my
who-
only change I'd like to see before we approve it, or we could approve it with provided that change will happen.
Excellent. As chair, I cannot make a motion, but I would accept a motions to pass our minutes with the elongation of all the acronyms as
I
suggested.
make that motion. I'll make that motion, Mavis, to accept it with
Perfect.
the changes that we discussed just now.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dale. All in favor, turn on your little, let me see your thumbs up. All opposed, I need to see a nay. I'm going to say motion passes. The minutes are approved.
Is Andre frozen? I think we might have lost him.
I froze for a second. I think I'm back.
What was your thumbs up or down to? What did you do that one?
Oh, no,
Okay.
I did. Yeah, it was thumbs. I didn't even hear the question. I think it was just, I was thumbs up if it was to approve.
Meeting minutes, yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Fantastic. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. Suzanne Carlson, are you ready for your update?
I don't see Suzanne on the meeting just yet. So oh, there she is. Never mind. Great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Suzanne Carlson, Public Transportation Division Administrator. So I have some staff updates, and I'm sorry, let me just open up and make sure I'm hitting all the right things on the agenda here. I think it's just staff updates from, yeah. So we have made an offer that's been accepted for our policy and strategic investment manager. This position was held by Susan Pfeifman, Marcia Hoskins, and then we've had someone on rotation, Stephanie Zellner, who's been doing a wonderful job, but is going back to her full-time role that she came over from, which is in a different part of ODOT. So we do have a new person who will be starting May 1st, and I haven't yet released information about the individual, but I think they're going to be a really great addition to our team. Look forward to having them join ODOT. We have another position, I believe we've, so for the position that was held by Jessica Horning, that is open right now. We are preparing that, and we will be advertising it and looking to hire someone for that. So we'll look forward to really getting some good candidates in for that. And I think those are the main ones I had in mind that are relevant to this group. For some reason, Leanne, you're showing up huge on my screen, and I don't know if that means you're wanting to add to that or if you're just going to take on the next item with the business updates. I'll pass it to you if you are.
Yeah, I will take on the next item, but I'm not sure why I'm big on your screen. Hopefully I'm not big on anyone else's screen. Hopefully I'm just like a small box. But I do know, like, if you click the three dots, if you hover over someone's face and you accidentally click pin or something like that, then you could see one of our faces really big and see everyone else small. So you can unpin folks if you accidentally pin them. So were there any questions or any comments for Suzanne about hiring before I move into the next two sort of ODOT business pieces, which is around some logistics for our July meeting and a brief update on the Mobility Advisory Committee efforts?
I personally would just like to say thank you for hiring somebody, and you guys have a lot of holes right now to fill, and please get them done so we can keep rolling along and having a lot of influence and building up our bike pedestrian system, because it's really hard to do when you don't have people hired in those positions. So thank you.
Great. Well, I can pop in, thank you, Mavis. And I can pop in with a brief overview of what we're planning for our July meeting. I wanted to talk people through, we posted the draft agenda just so you can kind of start to see what we're thinking. This is our next in-person opportunity, and we're scheduling kind of one full day of required meetings and site visits, and then a little bit of things on either side of that on the other 2 days in case people can come and spend both nights. We want to give you an opportunity to engage a little bit on either end of that full day. Our destination will be the Corvallis, Philomath area. So we'll be doing some site visits with Jenna Berman, who's also on the call, to see some projects. It'll be on July 23rd, 24th, and 25th. The main day being the 24th, which is our regular Wednesday. We'll have an optional dinner Tuesday night as folks come into town, an optional no-host dinner. And then we will have an infrastructure tour on Wednesday, the 24th. And then we'll have our regular OBPAC meeting that afternoon that will have a hybrid option so that people can join from online to that meeting. Then with an opportunities for some great some space in there for some great presentations that will do our agenda build over time. Then we will have our final day will be that Thursday. In the morning, we'll get up and have coffee and we'll do a debrief about our site visit the day before and about our meeting that we've had to try to catch people before they head out if they need to drive home early on Thursday morning. And then, or carpool home or transit home, whatever is working best for you. And then on Thursday, we'll have an optional longer site visit out to Philomath. So all of our site visits will be kind of based on bike ride speed, and we'll be trying to get folks out on bikes to go on those site visits riding bicycles. But we will have some options for folks who don't feel as comfortable or aren't can't ride a bicycle for that reason. So both of the site visits will be bike focused, but we'll have other ways to get there if you choose not to bike. And our optional site visit on that Thursday will be a longer bike ride out to Philomath. And then we'll be done by lunch and folks can head home after that. So that's the general take for that site visit, and we'll be out in Jenna Berman's area. So we'll see a lot of her. Thank you so much, Jenna, for helping getting that scheduled. Roberta will be sending a survey out to you very soon. Thanks, Jenna, to get your travel plans. What days are you planning on being there? We'll start arranging carpools and making sure that folks have bikes to ride. Roberta, did I miss anything from the survey?
No, you got it.
Okay.
As Leanne mentioned, I'll be sending out that survey pretty in the next couple of days here, just to gather those details out from everyone.
Thank you, Roberto. And a couple of you know me from my past life when I used to lead bike rides all the time. So you know that I'm really excited about the bike riding part. So I look forward to being out there with you all using the infrastructure that we work hard to get on the ground in a safe way. Any questions about that before I move on to the MAC update? MAC stands for Mobility Advisory Committee. Awesome. So quick update. The OBPAC has been engaged in an ongoing sort of feedback with another committee called the Mobility Advisory Committee that advises ODOT on freight capacity on roadways. And not going into all the details of that history, I wanted to let you know, give you a current update of where we are, which is that staff is currently undergoing a process to make recommendations to update the MAC charter, and that process is still happening. This process hasn't wrapped up yet, so we don't have an updated draft charter to share at this time, but we'll let OBPAC members know when the draft updates are ready so that y'all can review and provide any comments. There is an effort right now to schedule with our co-chairs and some of the ODOT folks from delivery and operations and other areas that manage some areas around that committee to schedule for mid-April to talk through updates and be in a room together. This has again been an ongoing process that has taken probably, I'm looking at Emma, I'm like, I think it's been like 2 or 3 years or something. So this is an ongoing project. Too long, ongoing project. So we're looking forward to that, scheduling that meeting in mid-April and being able to share the charter that has been updated with OBPAC members, or when it has been updated with OBPAC members. Yes, Beth.
Question. Maybe Emma knows the answer to this. Sorry, I'm being distracted by my own words. I'm gonna turn off the chat. All right, so there are 2 openings on MAC, one for a bicycle person and one for a pedestrian person. There, I saw on the MAC website. Were we part of that? Are they asking us to help fill those positions? Is there a relationship? How can we help that along?
At last count, we as a committee said, please improve the process and the committee dynamics before we appoint more people to go spend precious time trying to contribute and not having it go very far or do a whole lot is the current status to my knowledge, unless anyone else wants to chime in. I think that's where we left it at.
Okay, so at the next MAC meeting that Mavis and I are going to have with them, I'll bring it up and see.
Yeah, and we did push for OBPAC to be the entity to appoint the bicycle representative and the pedestrian representative and to have continuity if those positions are filled. But we only want to, ask people to contribute their time if we think it's worthwhile.
Great. Would Emma, would those people be OBPAC members?
Not necessarily. So previously it was Nick Meltzer and Bob Junedef, and then Mavis and I had been serving as alternates in case there were scheduling conflicts, but they don't have to be OBPAC members.
Okay. And so you guys didn't work out exactly how OBPAC will find those people, and are we going to recommend appointing them? Is that how that works?
OBPAC has the role of appointing those positions.
We will appoint them.
At this
So
point.
we will
Yeah,
decide.
but I mean, that's not really clear in the charter. So that's part of the stuff we're trying to figure out is, are there terms on this committee? Who's on the committee? How does the committee process? And there's been some incremental improvements, but I think there need to be more improvements for how the committee's operating before it makes sense to appoint bicycle and pedestrian representatives. I see Jenna's joined us visually, so I'm wondering if she has thoughts that she wants to add to this.
No, I guess I wasn't actually sure about the part of OBPAC having to recommend. I actually don't think I knew that, so that's really interesting. So no, I've just had thoughts about how we might be able to find a better fit, for that those representatives. But I've shared that with Leanne and the committee, so they've heard my thoughts. So.
Okay. And Jenna, you're sounding a bit staticky, just so you know.
Oh, okay. I'll shut up.
Don't shut
You
up.
sound great. We want to hear you.
That's not the solution.
I can share that the work that staff has been tasked with to make recommendations to the MAC charter. I'm on that committee. Jessica Horning was on that committee, has been replaced by one of the ATLs to provide those voices on the committee, and Jenna has engaged as I've been out of town on some of the days that committee has met. So we're in it. Just can't really talk. We can't it's just an internal process until it's not. So so we will definitely keep you as soon as that those recommendations have gone to our managers at ODOT and the edits have been made, we will be able to share that updated charter. But so we're in the thick of it. We're in the thick of it. And I will say that this is all probably happening because of the work that OBPAC has done to try to work with that committee and the audit. And there was an audit, I believe it was the Secretary of State's office that did an audit. So there's this has been a long going process, and it's moving. It just moves. It moves slowly. It's one of the pros and cons of bureaucracy. That change happens slowly, but we're headed there.
That's great.
And that's all I have on that topic. So I think we can move forward, Mavis, unless there are any other questions.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I think we should wait until after after Leanne and everybody can tell us what they came up with before we start appointing people back to that committee. So, so I think we should just table. Yes, I understand that they're asking now, but we needed we need change before we send people back there. So let's kind of just keep it in our back pocket.
And I'll pause to say, like, I don't think ODOT's asking y'all to identify somebody right at this moment, because we are trying to do that work that was requested so that it could be a better experience for those members, and some other the comments that you all so graciously made on their earlier version of the charter and before there was a charter. So it's all so no request yet to add those members. I think the next step is exactly what Mavis said, which is, I'm guessing, what we'll be talking about in mid-April. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you guys for your report. We are going to be moving on to our community paths 2022 recap and the 2024 solicitations with Alan Thompson.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you,
Great.
Alan.
I'm Alan Thompson, and I'm the Community Master Program Manager, giving you an update on where we are with the program and get some input from the committee on. Am I still on?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
Okay, pardon my language. It told me that I was disconnected. I think
Oh,
I may
you're
have.
fine.
Okay. So what we'll be discussing today is a recap. What, for those of you who are new to the committee, what is the OCP or Community Pass Program, and how it's funded, and then get into the 2024 solicitation. And then, of course, get into any recommendations you may have. The key things we're looking at for this upcoming cycle are the split between construction and planning, and the scoring matrix percentages. Those have changed a bit. So for those of you that don't know, the OCP, Oregon Community Pass Program, is a ODOT grant program created under HB 2592 in 2019. It is the only program that really funds off-system active transportation that are not on or along a roadway. And historically, Oregon State Highway funds could only be used for on-roadway improvements. So this is a way to provide this program and complement the on-road work that's being done. So it's biennial, started in 2020. In 2020, we are on our third cycle coming up in August. And the new change is that we're going back and forth between federal and state. So the upcoming solicitation this year will be federal only. In 2026, it will be state only. And then it'll rotate again, 2028 federal, 2030 state. And the reason being is we're just dealing with an awful lot of money, and there'll be a lot of grants and for this upcoming cycle. And this makes it easier for us to administer. It also, by changing the state to a 4-year cycle, gives us a chance to build up the cash on hand, because it has to be just cash on hand available funds for state. And that's coming in at anywhere between $900,000 to $1.2 million per year. So going into a 4-year cycle gives us an opportunity to have a meaningful grant program for state. There are two types of projects: construction, which can be state or federal, and we look at critical links, which I always say is a first mile, last mile to destinations, connects to schools, downtown, shopping, employment, and other destinations, and regional paths, which are longer distance paths serving communities. I look at Oregon's Bear Creek Greenway, Portland Springwater Corridor, the 40-mile loop is another example. And the other one is project refinement, because this is a new program, having the ability to do the initial planning, concept development, alternatives analysis, final alternative, and get that in advance to prepare for a construction grant. So that's because now we have money available, and you can actually start planning for that money. Here's an example from cycle 1. This is a critical link, Madras. It was connecting a park to a parking lot that was about a half a mile away. And it used to be that you would park the car, get your bike out, and then go out into the street and then ride the distance to where this off-road bike facility, bike trails are and everything. And what this did is it provided a direct linkage from the parking lot through over to the street and provided a crossing. What's not showing in the picture is the stop sign and lighting that was put up to help provide a safe crossing. The other one is the Reedville Trail, and this one was just finished, and it's if you look at it, you can see on the left picture before there is a board that someone tossed across, about a 4x6 board that people were using to cross this little creek. And you can see the remnants of it on the other side after they put up the bridge. The good thing about it is that it not only does it connect to a much larger path that will hopefully eventually connect Sherwood all the way to Beaverton, but it also connects to a little school just south of Rock Road. There's an elementary school where kids will be walking on the old trail that was either dilapidated to the north or not constructed to the south, and go into the side entrance to the school and track in mud. Now there's a little spur that connects from this trail right into the school. So it doubled as a Safe Routes to School project as well. So I mentioned before that we had both federal and state funding. Pardon me. For federal funding, we have an allocation that we get to the state based upon population, and all that comes to this program through the transportation alternatives. So all of the state funding that goes to ODOT goes. Portland and Scotts area, which is Salem, they get a formula all about as well because they're over 200,000, but that they have to spend for active transportation or other transportation alternatives. But all the state funds that we get, goes to this program. It's formula allocation of the state. We also had a portion of the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. And we had a big chunk of that. We received $25 million, and we broke it up into two, the 2022 cycle and 2024 cycle. And so we're using that funds, we're using our transportation alternative funds, and we were asked to bring forward our fiscal year 28 through 30 allocation that we're going to be getting from the feds. And when you combine all those, it comes out to almost $61 million, give or take a little bit. And so that's a huge amount. And so that's what we're looking at for this. So the state funding is going to be alternate. And because we're advanced loading the 2830, when we do the next cycle for federal in 2028, we'll be using the FY 31 through 33 funding. And that'll be about $5 million per year that we're getting for it. So this 61 million that we're having right now is an aberration. And it'll settle down to every 4 years and have about $20 million for every federal cycle. Now, the state funding, that was the bicycle excise tax for those of you that bought new bikes, $15 tax on every bike over $200, that's new. That goes directly into this program, and we get a portion of the vehicle privilege tax. And that's limited to cash on hand, since I mentioned earlier that adds up to around $900,000 to $1.2 million per year. Sometimes we supplement that by using transportation operating funds, which is a flexible funding from ODOT that is considered not a state highway fund dollars that we can do. And the last two cycles, we've received $4 million for each cycle. So if that continues, then we could have as much as an $8 million state funded solicitation in 2026. But that's not guaranteed. There's a lot of competition for these funds. So who's eligible? Local governments, school districts, tribal governments, transit districts, special government body, and the new change is nonprofits. So nonprofits are now eligible for federal funds. And it used to be that we would have them apply for state funds, they'd have to partner with a local agency. And for federal funds, ODOT would have to administer the contract. There's a whole host of issues that would have to go in there. So if you know of any nonprofits that are interested, have them contact me, because this is not a simple procedure of us just giving them money. It's a whole host of government regulations that have to be followed. The other one is project refinement grants. I mentioned before, it's limited to preliminary planning, so there is no engineering stamp that it goes onto it. And we look at narrowing alternatives, researching environmental concerns in preparation for what will be NEPA, National Environmental Protection Agency or Act, and then estimating construction costs and documenting community input and support. And we're really throwing hard this estimating construction costs, because if anything hurts, it's the underbidding, where a project comes in where they bid X amount of dollars And then when we start putting together the RFP, the bids come out much, much, much higher. We've had that with several projects now, and it's just turned into a big problem. Another one also, because this is funded with federal grants, is that when you're applying for federal dollars, you have to have the federal regulations. We had a case in cycle one where a community, they had done their own study previously. They spent around $200,000, and we couldn't use any of it because they did it to state standards. They didn't do it to federal standards. So a huge amount of that had to be redone as part of the grant itself. So that's important to know before providing anything for any application. Now, construction grants can include all phases, planning, environmental, right of way, so it can include that project refinement, but it must include construction. We don't fund just environmental. We don't fund just right of way. We have to fund all the way through construction. And as I mentioned, any previously conducted work must have met federal requirements, or it will most likely need to be redone. Here's our solicitation schedule. Pre-applications in August, applications on November 1st through January 15th, and the awards will be happening in May of 2025 and execution in October of 2025. I neglected to mention that we're going to have a consultant review the construction applications, do a technical scoping review, and to see if they're up high, too high, or too low, and that will impact the scoring of it. So we want to make sure that if there is anything wildly off, that we nip it in the bud at the very beginning before we start issuing awards and start spending money. So here's the funding split that we're talking about. We'd like to get your comment on is we have $61 million. And so what I'm proposing is 10% of that roughly is $6 million. And that goes along with what we did previously, where we had the first cycle, we had $15 million, and then we had $1.5 million for project refinement. And then we had $3 million in cycle two when we had $33 million in federal funds. So we're looking at keeping that 10%, and it still will fund quite a bit of projects. We increased the minimum from 75,000 to 400,000 because this is federal and ODOT will be administering this. The costs are tremendous for ODOT when we start administering federal projects, and the same thing with construction. So construction was 200,000 to 4 million, and then it was 200,000 to 6 million, and now we're looking at $1 million to 6 million. And the reason why I say 1 million to 6 million, because those are big projects, is that when we do the state-funded solicitation, those will be the smaller grants. That will be $200,000 to 1 million. So because it's a 30% match for the state versus a 10.27% match for federal, it makes sense to have a smaller grant using the state funds and large grants being federal. This also means that when you're dealing with state funds, you don't have certain cities that can afford it. Having a $5 million construction grant using state funds, and then there's only, let's say, $500,000 left for everyone else because they scored so well. So this helps us to really spread the state funds to a lot of different communities than what we did with cycle one or cycle two. And then of the applications. But let me stop right here and just open this part right now up to questions and comments you may have on this.
Alan, maybe you can stop sharing your screen for a second so that folks
I
can
can.
see each other.
Alan, I have a question. This is Beth.
Sure.
So you recommend these based on your past experience, I take it, the 6% for project refinement, etc.
Yes, it was 10%, which just goes with what the committee had before. The last cycle I'd asked for a higher amount, and the committee said, no, let's keep it down to around 3 million. I think I'd asked for 5 million.
How
when
successful were you with the 10%?
With the 10%, it actually worked really well. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we did fund. If you just give me a few minutes and continue to ask questions, I can dig this up in the background. So are there any other questions while I pull that up?
So I'll just kind of fill in here. If
Okay.
I recall right, the project refinement part was in order to, so people or cities, especially small cities, have they refined it. It's a realistic ask basically, and that helps them down the road. Am I capturing that correctly, Alan?
I didn't catch the first part. Can you repeat the first part, please?
The reason for the project refinement grants getting more funding is to really save problems down the road.
Correct. And the idea being that it gets them set up for a construction grant and have all the ducks lined up. So one of the things that we're going to be requiring is input into we have a cost estimation tool that ODOT uses, and they've graciously modified that to remove stuff like freeways and freeway bridges, and made it a little bit much more amenable to active transportation. And so we want it to be in that format because it makes it easier for us to then review the project, develop the scope and the business case as we administer the project.
Is there any reason, Alan, that you want to have more than 10%?
Before we were dealing with we knew that we had the IIJA, and we anticipated that this big $61 million would be coming with this upcoming cycle. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted more for the last cycle. Now that we know that after this cycle, it's going to be dropping down to $20 million for a solicitation every 4 years instead of 35 or 60, then we don't need to have as much in terms of project refinement. So 10% should be more than sufficient to cover the next cycle.
Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah. Hi, Jenna.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay? I didn't know if it was still
you're
foggy.
not stacking.
Okay, don't know what that was. Beth, I wanted to help answer that question a little bit and just ground this in the regions a little bit. So the refinement work for Oregon Community Paths, I think, is so crucial because a lot of communities have a path identified in like a transportation system plan. It's a fat red line on a map usually, and it's like a really great idea and a great connection. But we haven't looked to see if there are environmental issues and mitigation at that stage. They haven't looked to see if any right-of-way acquisition is needed necessarily. Those are the things that you work through in the refinement planning process. So often that line on a map like makes so much sense, but you haven't done the work in that early planning phase. And so you need to take it farther. And then once you know whether or not you have environmental issues, then you know if you need to acquire right of way, for example. Those two things have huge budget implications.
Yes.
Right. And so so the refinement work I think of is like in my head, it translates to like environmental, do we need to build a little wall? Do we need to, build a culvert so we can get over a little waterway to make sure that the tadpoles can get through, that stuff. So I think just if that's helpful, I think of it as that. It's like getting real, figuring out where the real alignment can be so that you then can apply for construction funding and it's feasible. And you know how much money you need.
Yeah, and Jenna and Alan, I think that's why I'm asking, is it enough for you, Alan? Do you feel comfortable with that? And I think I got my answer.
Yeah, I feel comfortable. And we funded the last cycle, we funded 9 project refinement grants in the last cycle. And I think we had 17 applications, if I recall, for project refinement. I could be wrong on that. What I pulled up was just the awarded grants. But Jenna's right, and to just give you an example is that if they've applied for a construction that starts from beginning, project refinement all the way through construction, there's so many unknowns there. So what we do is we attach really high contingency costs to anticipate the unknowns. And that's where, you know, they may say it's like $800,000, but based upon the contingencies and all the what ifs and everything else, it could actually balloon up to $2 million. And I mentioned earlier that that's where we end up with underbidding so much, is because they didn't do the homework, and the project refinement is doing the homework.
Thank you.
Emma.
Hey, Ellen, thank you. This is exciting that this program is increasingly funded for this round. I'd love to see that level of funding or more, like 100 million per cycle would be, I think, our committee's interest per our previous work plans, ongoing into the future, but this is making a significant impact. And so my hope is that we're setting up the limits so that that impact really can follow through, and we're not building partial projects when a little bit more would have gotten a complete project. And with inflation in recent years, I'm wondering if the 6 million is high enough on the top end of the construction project range. Is that going to give us partial projects? Are we funding this at high enough amount that we could have some regionally significant bridges built for multimodal needs in a regional setting? Because this is the Oregon Community Paths program. It's not the local little bridges across wetlands. Sometimes those are needed too, but I'm not sure that we have a funding system in our state that really achieves those more significant multimodal bridge projects along multi-use paths. And since we have 60+ million in this cycle, it might be an opportunity to look at some of those higher dollar amount projects if we were to increase that top end of the construction range.
That's
on that, Ellen.
Oh, someone was going to say something?
No, I'm curious your thoughts and kind of what we're seeing. We've funded a number of project refinement grants in the past. And so I'm also curious any insights you have as to what the results of those are. Like how much of a queue is there of jurisdictions that have participated in this program over the last handful of years, and now they have project ready to go to construction projects. Do we have a dollar amount of all those queued up projects? How does that relate to the 55 million? I'm just trying to figure out where's the bulge in the system and where's the need so that we can respond to that.
We are just now receiving the first of the project refinement grants to completion from cycle 1. Okay. And so none of those have had a bridge. I can say anecdotally, Bend, the city of Bend had a application for a component of the bridge that would eventually, it was just a piece of it. And so it was state funding for only $1 million. But eventually it was to be for a bridge to cross Hawthorne Avenue, ODOT owned, to the other side. And they just received a RAISE grant to do that. And the RAISE grant was $19 million. So that's a huge amount, but it's over an ODOT roadway. So I haven't seen the picture of it. So I'm assuming that it's going to be a fairly extensive bridge, like going over a freeway, I'm assuming. But I haven't, and those would be way out of what we would be anticipating for a pedestrian bicycle bridge. The city of Salem applied and it was awarded a similar project refinement grant in cycle 2 to look going over Oregon 22, just to the east of Salem, downtown Salem. And we're still getting the IGA together on that, so that hasn't started yet, but that will give us more information. But I anticipate the bridges themselves would just dominate. One or two bridges could easily just take all of the funding for this program.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a sense that the 6 million is going to complete some regional paths at the funding at the cost level that we're seeing now, or if that's more like, okay, you can do a phase of a project and it's piecemeal?
It's always been considered that it's going to be piecemeal because you're always going to have an issue with, at around $3 million a mile, and you have 15 miles. It's going to take a while to build all that, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I just pose that as potential adjustment to consider as a committee. Do we want to raise the 6 million a bit higher so that larger portions of projects can get done and there's less piecemeal mobilization? sometimes there's some thresholds where you have to fund it to a certain amount to make certain really important bike ped projects even eligible in the first place.
Right.
I'm happy supporting what we have proposed or increasing the 6 million up to maybe more like 10.
And internally, we've been very open to seeing how we can leverage this and other funds to build something. When I mentioned the great streets, it's leveraging different projects into one where you get the efficiencies and make a much better project. But as an example of being able to find different funding that might work to allow us to build more than what we could just within the confines of the grant itself, we'll always be searching for that.
Yeah, I personally would rather have staff time focused on delivering great projects that are needed and less time focusing on piecing things together, hoping that it becomes a project.
I understand.
Thank you. I'll let my other committee members chime in.
And I see that Andre's hand is up. Andre?
All right, thanks so much, Alan. I really appreciate that presentation. And I also was reflecting on the conversation we had last time. I think it was a very fruitful conversation that sort of landed us on the 10% that we got to. I just had some questions and wanted to explore sort of this, the construction to project refinement ratio. And I think the goal is to always land on the most perfect number. I think that's the goal for all of us here. So I was curious if there is potential to engage with potential applicants to better understand how the 10 to 90% ratio maybe feels to people who are actually applying for these grants. And maybe, as we introduce community-based organizations, maybe is that different for different bodies that are applying as well? I think that'd be pretty interesting to find out. And then I was just curious about sort of the requests versus awards relationship for both construction and refinement. So if there was any way to share at some point in the future, potentially, are those ratios different? Is construction, for example, is there a huge request for restructuring and only a smaller percentage of those being awarded, or and what is the sort of reverse for project refinement applications as well? Thank you so much.
Okay. That was, I can say that the total number of grants at the last cycle was about 58 applications and totaling about $81 million in requests. And I'm trying to remember the ratio without having to dig back into my files off the top of my head. I apologize for not having that ready for you. But the other one is a potential to engage, and I wrote down potential grantees to get what they thought. And I have 3 webinars. One has already passed, and then 2 more coming up. And I've also requested with our tribal liaison if I can have one-on-ones with the individual tribes. But what the idea is, I tell everyone that if you have not started any planning, if you're not ready to construct, then it's best to go with the project refinement. So I'm pushing the project refinement because I don't want the headache of coming in there saying, well, you said it's $1 million and it's going to be $2.5 million. Let's go through a long, prolonged effort of downscoping or possibly canceling the project. And this is after announcements are made and everything else, and we don't want unhappy people. We want to find that win-win. So I'm pushing the project refinements as much as possible. I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but it tells you my state of mind as we go into the solicitation.
Alan, do you think you could follow up with the committee with the numbers?
Absolutely.
Of I think it was 4-to-1 oversubscribed, but I also can't quite remember for sure, so I don't want to say that for sure yet. For the construction side, I don't know what it was for the project refinement side, but I think it was oversubscribed, but I'm just not quite sure by how much. But Alan, maybe you could provide that email after this meeting and we could send it out.
I will have that to you by Monday.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then Dave's hand is up next. Thanks, Andre.
Hey, thank you. Hi, Alan. I'm Dave Thompson. I live in Bend, actually. I wanted to follow on with Andre's comment because I thought it was a really good one. And wondering if rather than walking down the split between the two categories now, if it would be feasible to think about doing that after the pre-applications process is complete, and then have a review process where you kind of look at what people are asking for and what really makes sense, and then making that decision. Just a question.
Thank you. That's a great opportunity. Historically, what we had done is when we saw a construction application that was too high, the options were we could downscope the construction, we could cancel the project, and we did this with Rockaway Beach as an example, is that we converted it to a project refinement. So that's always an opportunity, and you're suggesting that be as part of the results and recommendations after the pre-application is a good one, and I will do that.
Cool. Thanks.
I'm just going to jump in there because we have 2 minutes left of the time allotted for Alan's presentation. So I know that you didn't get through your slide deck. So what else do you got for us?
Okay, I had just one more, and that is the split for the scoring sheet. And let me go back to sharing that screen. And so quick share, and if it will let me do it, there we go. Oh, shoot. So this is how we're scoring the application. And what we've done is we've increased equity and safety to make them equal. And so what we've ended up with is the equity is now the social equity index instead of transportation disadvantage index. We've upped safety a little bit. And for I have outreach and equity, what we've done is we still have the same outreach that we've done before, but we've also added in some qualitative questions based upon Federal Transit Administration. So we ask questions like, please explain how you have reached out to traditionally disadvantaged communities and what input did they give you and how was that incorporated? So it's one of the few qualitative questions we ask, but we're really driving home not just outreach, but outreach to people who need to be part of the process and who've been historically excluded from the process, and making sure that their voices are heard and are being incorporated. So that's the main thing with that. And otherwise, things are the same. I mentioned that because we have a consultant coming aboard, costs come up an awful lot, and they're about 20%, and that works with the project readiness in combination. And I will stop right there and allow any final questions before I'm completely out of time.
I might be jumping into a fire here because I am not like totally, I wasn't there for the last meeting, but for the like pass fail judging projects, do you consider the amount of people the project would have an impact on, or do you just like, does that number go into it at all?
It does not. That we're just looking at specific criteria. You know, does it meet the definition of a critical link or a regional path? Do you have support of the elected officials on board? So there's a whole host of things that's in the administrative rule that talk about, you know, a project that does A, B, C, D, and E. And I did have that slide and I removed it, unfortunately. So it does not, but in terms of funding, because of the federal funds, there's a certain amount that has to be spent on over 200,000, a certain amount has to be spent 50,000 to 2,000, and a certain amount that has to be spent for populations under 5,000. We haven't had any issue with meeting that without having to do any geographic equity. It just works. So that's the good news. But we're specifically reaching out to a lot of the rural areas because we're not getting as many applications as we want. 50% of the applications we received were from Region 2, and followed by Region 1. followed by Region 3, then followed by 4, then followed by Region 5. I think we only had like 6 applications from Region 5 out of the, I think I said 58 applications. So that is critical that, we reach out to them.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Good question, by the way.
So wonderful, Alan. Did you have any last words before we move on?
Nope, that was it. I wanted to get your input and comments on those 2 big changes and let you know and incorporate any suggestions. And I already have one, so I'm very happy about that. And I'll follow up with email to everyone on the ratio for the project refinement and construction.
Thank you so much. And this is one of those things that is very exciting for me because I love to see things actually happen. So
yes.
At this point, we are supposed to be on our break. So I expect everybody to be back here at 2:15. Our break got eaten up a little bit, but see you at 2:15. Welcome back, Beth. And Dave, nice to see your face.
We're very excited over here. Deschutes County Commissioners adopted the Transportation Systems Plan with our proposed list of desired community connections.
Nice.
No money, but it's in the plan now, so.
You can't get money without the plan, and that's the first
Right.
step. Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, it is 2:15, so I need to see some faces coming back, if at all possible, please. All right, I just want to follow up with Alan. You put some stuff in the chat. At this point, are we oversubscribed or undersubscribed for this project grant cycle? I'm just curious.
Oh, we're still oversubscribed in terms of the available funding. In terms of overall funding, the need came when we had $37 million in grant funds. There was about $81 million in grant funds available, and that doesn't include the match. So it's a little bit less. In the first cycle, it was about $103 million, and we only had $15 million in funds. So it's getting a little bit better, but as the program grows and it's known that the money is available, the need will also grow because people will know there's money there.
Yes, I just want to build it all. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful break. We're going to be moving on to Callie Sullivan with our 2024 legislative update to kick us off with the second half of the meeting. So welcome.
Hey there, thanks for having me. Callie Sullivan. I am relatively new to ODOT. I'm a legislative coordinator and was here through this last session. So here to give you an update today. As I'm sure you're aware, the session wrapped up earlier this month. Although it was a short session, it was certainly really busy and a lot of bills did pass. ODOT, we don't introduce legislation during short sessions, so we're more tracking. We had a couple funding requests and also some informational hearings. The high profile bills this session were the governor's housing package, as well as the initiative to reform Measure 110, both of which did pass. ODOT was tracking about 125 bills this session, and there's a couple of those that I feel would be of interest to this group that I wanted to share. The first is Senate Bill 1576. This was an omnibus bill on civil matters, and it includes a section on recreational immunity. So this measure temporarily allows all local governments to opt into immunity for trails or structures in public easements or rights of way. This measure did pass and it sunsets in January 2026. The next measure is House Bill 4067. And this measure would have created the task force on electric micromobility. It would have created the task force and direct them to look at issues, best practices, statutes on these devices and submit a report to the legislature. It did pass with support out of the Joint Committee on Transportation, but it didn't pass ultimately at the end of session. So we'll be keeping an eye on that to see if it comes back. Lastly, I wanted to share House Bill 4103. This is also known as Trenton's Law, and it does modify the definition of e-bikes in the Oregon Vehicle Code. The measure did pass, although it was pared down from its original introduction. So the past measure brings Oregon law in alignment with federal regulation by creating a 3-tier classification for e-bikes, and it also set an age limit for 16 years of older to ride an e-bike. So that measure passed and will be updating our code as needed. So looking at the legislature as a whole, as I'm sure you saw in the news, but just wanted to flag here as well, there's new leadership in the legislature. So Dan Rayfield stepped down to run for Attorney General, and we have a new Speaker of the House, Representative Julie Fahey, and Rep. Bowman is the new Majority Leader. And lastly, I wanted to share the Joint Committee on Transportation announced that they're doing a legislative roadshow this interim. This will look really similar to what they did back in 2016 as they were developing the last funding package known as House Bill 2017, which passed in 2017. So we don't have a lot of information right now. They're working on the schedule and the plan. So stay tuned for more information on that. We're really excited about it. And that's all I have for you today, and happy to answer any questions.
Collie, can you say a few words about recreational immunity? Do you have that in your notes? I know this committee has asked about that in the past.
Yeah, is there anything specific or just a general overview of what that measure does?
Yeah, and what passed this session?
Yeah, so it wasn't its own bill. It came into the omnibus bill. And so what it does is it adds limitation for immunity for improved paths, trails, roads, and other rights of way that are used to access land for recreational purposes. This version adds walking, running, and bicycling to non-exclusive lists of recreational purposes. And a big part, a big flag for this is that it's temporary. So that's the general summary I have, but I'd be happy to provide, a deeper summary of this if you all are interested in that.
Yeah, I guess some more specific. So I just was up in Manzanita, Nehalem area. I know that there's a walking trail that is a key connection for pedestrians to not have to walk on Highway 101. And there are signs currently posted saying this is closed. And so I'm curious if what passed is making it easier and more accessible for trails and walking and biking facilities to be open again, or if it has gone in the direction of let's litigate everything and close down risk and not actually have it available to people to use. So what is the impact of this? And is there a next step to take to make sure that people can walk and bike in safe places as opposed to highway shoulders?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. This is something I want to connect with program staff and our legislative director who is working on this more closely and get some more detailed information with you all in writing so that you have it on hand. But yeah, I really appreciate the question on that.
Collie?
Yes.
I think I can add a little bit. I'm in Newport here, and so I'll give a real quickie for the newer OBPAC members. Newport was sued, and because somebody was tripping going to a recreational path. She said she was going to recreate and was not recreating at the time. She prevailed, and Newport was sued. And so the legislature came up with this to kind of solve that problem. I'll back up a little bit. In the meantime, cities have been advised to close all their recreational trails. And that may be what happened, Emma, up there. And now with this measure, which is kind of a stopgap, it only goes till January 2026. Cities can open them up again, and it'll be pretty much as usual. There needs to be permanent legislation so that this kind of suing of cities and any private entity does not happen again when people are using recreational spots so that these property owners, including cities, can have what's called recreational immunity. So that's the background there that I know of. And so this still has to become permanent, I feel.
And I guess my point is, I'm curious, I think cities more quickly respond to fear of litigation, and looked at City of Newport. We're like, oh, we don't want to be in that position. I'm wondering if there's any implementation support needed to get the word out to jurisdictions saying, you're clear through 2026, please reopen these facilities so that Oregonians and visitors can be using them in the meantime.
I think it's
sometimes
happened
legislation
through,
passes and doesn't actually, you go out to the trail and you're like, oh, this is still here.
I know. I guess individuals can tell their cities, but also through League of Oregon Cities that, issues publications and all kinds of things. They're aware. I think they're becoming aware. And if they're not, like say, individuals can tell private property owners and cities that. That's all.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, that's really helpful, and I'll follow up as well. Thanks for the questions, Emma.
I have a question about the Trenton's law and the age limit. I have heard multiple people say, oh, well, the age limit is kind of counterintuitive because it makes it so that you have to be 16, which you have to be 16 to drive as well. So you can't use an e-bike until you can drive. And so their point of view is that they're driving people away from cycling because of this law. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I know that the measure was pared down, and there was a lot of there's different groups that had different feelings on this. And so as an agency, we're neutral in it, and we did testify in it and said we're ready to implement this. From what my understanding is, Representative Emerson, that this is really a first step, and this isn't the end of working on these issues, but putting in an age limit was a first step into putting some parameters and discouraging younger folks from riding these after the accidents we've seen. So I don't have much insight into the conversations that went on with stakeholders, but from what I saw in committee, it looks like this is just a very first step, and that Emerson has more intent to work on this.
Dave has a comment.
Yeah, I'm in Representative Levy's district, so I've been semi-involved in this. So the Oregon law has always been that you have to be 16 to ride an e-bike. This did not change that. Actually, Representative Levy's original bill was going to remove that restriction for Class 1 e-bikes. And since that part was removed, basically nothing changed there. I will say that Ben Lapine Schools, once that happened, came out with a policy that they would no longer allow their middle schoolers to ride e-bikes and park them on school grounds because it's not legal. Now it hasn't been legal, but apparently they decided since it didn't get made legal, they better do something. So I agree that it does seem to, depend on who you talk to, what the right answer to that question is. And I'm sure that Emerson is going to continue to push to allow 16-year-olds to ride Class 1 bikes in a future session.
I also want to remind folks that ODOT's Colley's here to give us an update on the legislative session. So any clarifying questions, and I know that other OBPAC members have been involved in different ways, and I think Amanda Howell has also been involved in this particular one. But that if you, but any sort of advocacy for any further changes to those laws can be made on an individual level, wearing your personal hat, talking to your legislator about what you would like to see next session, which I'm guessing something will pop back up again in the future. So, but ODOT's role in this one was just to say we would be able to implement it. So, just want to remind folks of rules so that we don't we don't scare away Kali for future meetings. And I'll stop there. So if there's any other questions about the e-bike legislation, we can sort of write them down. Maybe we can try to tag team them between Kali, me, and Amanda, and Dave, who was very familiar with it as well.
Did you have anything else for us, Kali?
That was it for me. Thank you all for having me. And just a last quick update. Kayla, who's been here before, is transitioning out. She's going on maternity leave, and so I will be your new face for legislative updates in the future. So look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Beth, did you have something to add?
I have something to say. So I think that Trenton's, I guess we'll get clarification in 5 minutes, but you mentioned that, Kali, you mentioned that there's now a three tiers of e-bikes. So were all 3 tiers not allowed? Is the 16 years or older rule only for 1 type or 2 types or all 3 types?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I don't have it up in front of me, and I don't want to give any misguided information. So I'm going to get back to you in writing on that.
Okay. Well, also, yeah.
We can ask Amanda.
That's actually a great tee up because I think I'm next.
Yeah.
It is. Are we done here with the legislative updates so that we can move on to our e-bike and lending libraries, which is our next thing? Perfect. Amanda Howell, please take it away.
Thanks, Kali.
Thanks, everybody. Glad to be here with you all. And to answer, Beth, your question, it applies to all 3. And so I'm going to go ahead and sharing my screen because I prepared slides. Let me make sure. Okay. Can you see my slides and just my slides, not like notes and stuff?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm Amanda Howell. I'm the Innovative Mobility Program Manager for ODOT in the Public Transportation Division. Nice to see you all again. I was at the in-person meeting last time you all met, so I'm glad we had a chance to meet in person. I was asked to come today to talk about e-bikes, bike share, and lending libraries, and what's kind of happening across these 3 topics, both within ODOT and outside of ODOT. Okay, so this is the overview of the presentation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the e-bike classifications and the updates to the Oregon Vehicle Code, which Kali just teed up. And then I'm going to provide some e-bike lending library updates, talk a little bit about some rules that ODOT can play in supporting bike share, because I think that came up in the last meeting. And then I have an interesting news tidbit that I think will be of interest to this particular group. If you've already looked at my slide deck, you know what that is. But if you haven't, the surprise is coming. So, e-bike classifications. There are 3 types of e-bikes that exist. And this is across the industry, this is what has essentially been agreed upon as we think about how e-bikes have slightly different elements to them. And most states, I think it was like 47 states prior to, and maybe that's not quite that many, but most states prior to our session had already adopted the 3 bike classification definition. So Oregon was one of the few outliers at this point who had not adopted that. And so the key points about how they are different. So class 1 is a pedal assist. It's a pedal assist only. It has no throttle. And it has a maximum motor assisted speed of 20 miles an hour. So the motor engages only while the rider is pedaling, and it otherwise offers no assistance. And then that assistance caps at 20 miles an hour. Then we have class 2. Class 2 is both pedal assist and throttle assist. So the motor engages when the rider either uses the pedals or uses the throttle, but it has that same cap speed limit of 20 miles per hour. And then finally we have class 3. Class 3, also pedal assist. does not have a throttle, but its core difference is that it has a capped speed of 28 miles an hour. So it is the fastest e-bike that is on the market in terms of the 3 e-bike classifications. So that's what the 3 e-bike classifications kind of break down to. I'm going to jump and talk a little bit about the definition of the e-bike in Oregon Vehicle Code as it has been, and then what has changed now with HB 4103. But because I have this slide up, I wanted to kind of talk through a little bit of how Representative Levy's bill changed over the course of the session. Originally, in the original proposal, as Dave mentioned, the age limit of a 16 and older has actually always been part of Oregon Vehicle Code. So that technically, it was illegal for people under 16 to be riding an e-bike. So that was already part of code. Originally, Representative Levy's proposal would have allowed people under 16 to ride a class 1 e-bike, but it would have still been illegal for anyone under 16 to ride a class 2 or a class 3. Other states, including, I believe it's California and Washington, so our neighboring states, had it so that 16 and old, you could be under 16 and ride a class 1 and a class 2, but just not a class 3. And so there was some conversation, as I understand it, about sort of negotiations around where that age limit should fall. And ultimately, my understanding was that in order for the bill to pass in this session and for the adoption of the 3 classifications to go through, this was a concession that was made with the idea that there would be future discussion. And I think originally this was kind of tracking along with HB 4067, which would have been the task force on e-market mobility, as an idea that would be taken up by that task force to study more deeply. HB 4067, the task force didn't pass in this session, but I think the conversation is not over, but this is just, this is the start of that conversation, is my understanding. I want to talk through a little bit about what the definition of the vehicle of an e-bike has been in code to date. So our current code, which will be through 2024, said that an electric assisted bicycle means a vehicle that is designed to be operated on the ground on wheels. It has a seat or a saddle for the use of the rider. It's designed to travel with not more than 3 wheels in contact with the ground. It has both fully operative pedals for human propulsion and an electric motor. It's equipped with an electric motor that has a power output of not more than 1,000 watts, and it's incapable of propelling the vehicle at a speed of greater than 20 miles per hour in level ground. That has been the definition of an e-bike in our vehicle code. What HB 4103 does, it's now going to include the 3 classifications of an e-bike, and it actually changes the definition of an e-bike entirely. So what we just saw is going away. And the definition of an e-bike will simply say it's an electric assisted bicycle. An electric assisted bicycle means a bicycle that is equipped with an electric motor and is either class 1, class 2, or class 3. So it's referring back to the definition of a bicycle, which also exists in Oregon Vehicle Code. So that's a key difference. It also removes reference to wattage, and it removes, and it refers to the definition of a bicycle. I said that part. But it does not, unlike many other state bills, many other states' bills, we actually didn't include a reference to a wattage, which was an important distinction to make because operators like Beeline that do cargo bike delivery tend to use bikes that end up being equipped with motors somewhere in the 1,000 watt range in order to move that payload. And the federal reference to wattage is usually capped at 750. So that actually was something that was important that didn't end up in our bill. And then as Kali mentioned, it clarifies that you must be 16 or older to operate an e-bike. This was already there, but it had to be rewritten essentially to make sure that it was written in a way that applies to all 3 classes. That's really the change in terms of what happened with the age limit. The age limit has remained the same. It just means that because they updated the definition, they had to update how it applies. So that's what I've got on the e-bike stuff. I'm going to walk through, or that's the e-bike definition stuff. I'm going to walk through some stuff about the lending libraries and some bike share, and then I'm going to stop sharing so I can more easily see faces and comments, because I can't see that very easily right now. And then make sure I have time to answer any questions. And I hope that sounds okay. So on the moving over to the lending library side, I think when I previously chatted with you all in a previous presentation, I talked a little bit about this idea of e-bike lending libraries. And I also mentioned that we, ODOT, had applied internally for funds from the carbon reduction program to pilot e-bike lending libraries. So before I move into kind of updates on that, the pilot that we're working on, I wanted to give a little bit more background and examples of how these kinds of lending library projects can take shape, because they do tend to, they can be very different. So I wanted to highlight a couple that are not being run by ODOT. One is the City of Tigard's Power to the Pedal. This was a pilot that started last year. It's run as basically free e-bike share for residents at 2 multifamily affordable housing developments in Tigard. So those are the only people who have access to these vehicles. It's funded by a PG Drive Change grant. It's a partnership with the West Side Transportation Alliance. And some most recent data that I got from WTA on this is that since the start of the pilot, they've had over 400 trips taken and 40 unique users across those 2 developments. So that's one version of what an e-bike lending library can look like, which is essentially bike share, but for a just a specific community. So in this case, it's for residents of these affordable housing developments. And then there's a different one that I wanted to highlight. This is the Ride to Own program that's here in Portland and the greater Portland area. This is a year-long pilot that provides a pathway to free bike ownership for people who don't already have easy access or comfortability with e-biking. So it's a ride to own, so a loan to ownership model. So that's a little different than the Tigard model. This one's hosted by the Street Trust and We All Rise. It's funded by both PGE and DEQ. And there's 3 pilot locations in the Portland region. So they're piloting in Milwaukee, Hillsborough, and then the Park Rose neighborhood. So those are 2 examples of how these programs currently look that are underway. Then we have the ODOT e-bike lending library pilot that is in development that I wanted to provide an update on. So last year we were awarded $1 million in carbon reduction program funds to pilot e-bike lending libraries in 4 to 6 communities around the state. I'm in the process of working on this project. So the plan is that they would be 3-year pilots with at least 2 years of operations. I'm working with ODOT staff to identify those locations and local partners. So this isn't a competitive solicitation. This is, I'm working directly with staff in our regions to identify exactly where those locations and local partners are going to be there. And they're structured as, they're going to be structured as shared programs rather than the ride to own model. So more like that Tigard model than the Portland ride to own. And I'm going to have more info to share by summer. So right now we're just kind of in the early stages of figuring out how those projects are going to be very hyper localized. We're going to work with local partners, and we're in the process of identifying who and exactly where those are going to be. But we're looking at projects in Salem, LeGrand, Roseburg, and Bend at this point. Those are kind of where we're in the process of planning. Okay, one more topic. Bike share and roles ODOT can and does play. So on this side of things, there's a lot of roles I think that ODOT can and do play to some extent. So roles that we are already working on playing is providing funding to support bike share programs, and that's especially directly through the Innovative Mobility Program. I did want to highlight, so that is currently, the Innovative Mobility Program is currently a one-time funding program, but we will have significant amount of funding available to support shared mobility programs, which would include bike share. And I wanted to highlight that we just reopened our microgrant program on Monday. That's a non-competitive opportunity, up to 15,000. So entities around the state can apply for funds for up to 15,000 to run even small bike, like very small bike share programs. And then we'll have other funding and opportunities coming down the way that we'll be announcing in May. We can also, as an agency, convene local agencies and support coordinated efforts. Develop supportive infrastructure. That's obviously a huge piece. In terms of what we can do to support bike share, and provide guidance. That's also something that ODOT can do. I think that's something I've been thinking about. We haven't done a ton of that yet on the bike share side of things, but it's certainly a role that ODOT can play. And then lastly, my related bit of interesting and fun news. So this is related to bike share. This just was announced in the last few weeks. So this is, I want to highlight the federal fiscal year budget that was introduced. The federal 2025 budget could open up FTA funding for bike share and shared micromobility, assuming it passes. So this is what the new federal fiscal year 2025 budget says. Support funding for micromobility systems. This new provision would enable FTA grant recipients to directly fund shared micromobility systems. By improving access to transit, shared use micromobility can reduce transportation emissions while improving equitable access to transportation. For those of us who are motivated and excited to see expansion of bike share, this could be a huge development as a potential source of funding for bike share that has not existed previously. So, and help create that stronger integration between transit and bike share. So that's a big bit of news that I wanted to share with you all. And I did include a link if you're interested to read more. The North American Bike Shared Scooter Share Association posted about that, that bit of news. I can't really provide a whole lot more in terms of what would implementation of any of that look like. But just that's something I'm definitely tracking at this stage to see how that continues to develop. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, although I can pull it back up and bring you all back so I can see you. Great. Okay. Emma.
Oh, just yay.
Oh, that was oh, a reaction. Great. Yes. I know. That was a very thrilling little bit of news. And otherwise like dense federal documentation. I'm glad it's other people's job to like really dig through that to find those key pieces of information.
Amanda, I think we're still seeing your screen, or partially.
Oops. Wait, I see what I did. I see what I've done there.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Mavis.
I just have this is kind of a personal question, but here we go. So for dealing with e-bikes, I have had to purchase a whole lot of new things for my bike shop. Like it has been one of those things where like I'm buying lifts for the guys because they were getting hurt lifting them. I've bought a lot of tablets and things like that, new cords, because at this point you can update your e-bikes. I mean, they're just like your phone, right? And so all this new infrastructure I've had to put into my bike shop to make it viable for e-bikes, on top of being really strict about like, oh, that battery, it can't spend the night here kind of things. And so is that some of what you're talking about with the bike shop and the micro mobility programs? Is that something that is being addressed, or is it still just like, yep, we got them now, figure out how to play with them?
Oh, in terms of what we can fund, like how we can support. That's a great question. I mean, I think that that's something for the microgrant program. To me, it seems like we haven't received any. I mean, we've previously provided grants to like the community cycling center here in the Portland area, but I think that is something, certainly it makes a lot of sense that as we are working to provide an expansion of access to these, and that there's a lot of impacts that we have to think about. And so I would say, I mean, if that's something you're interested in pursuing, I think it's worth looking into that, like for funding, because I think that is something, I mean, I'm certainly thinking about it from the standpoint of, you know, talking with my colleague, Heidi Manlove, who's in our transportation safety office, around some of the safety issues in terms of thinking about like, yes, e-bikes are heavier. So like, what does it mean to move them around? And also being mindful that because they are heavier, they, you know, how thinking about as you ride them, like coming to a complete stop, and like what does that mean when you're like sharing space with pedestrians, and how quickly are you going to be able to stop when you're on something that is just absolutely heavier. So there's those pieces, and then also in terms of batteries and charging and like what or how safe charging, all those kinds of things are definitely things I think we need to be thinking about also from an education standpoint. I feel like I'm not entirely, if I answered your question.
Well, it's just that, you know, I love e-bikes, but I sell a lot of them, and there's always like, well, they're great, but these are the things that you have to think about. And like here in Eastern Oregon, for example, the whole freezing of the battery, that is a huge thing where I'm like, okay, you bought this new nice thing. Do you have somewhere inside where you can keep this battery safe because you can't freeze it? And so there's just a whole lot of layers that aren't necessarily getting the attention that they need.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you bringing those points up. I think it's something I'm talking with Heidi about in terms of how, because starting to do some outreach and campaign efforts around e-bikes in general, which we have not. ODOT hasn't done a specific campaign around e-bikes to date. It's just been around like bicycles in general. So I think that's something I'll flag for her as well, and resources that we can give out to bike shops. About, you know, that they can not only resources for you all, but resources that you can give to people when they buy a bike or are taking one home. I think that's also, these are, yeah, good points and critical questions.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Amanda?
And Andre, thanks for flagging that you wrote the Rise to Own application or grant. That's awesome.
I have a comment that Mavis's question, you said it's personal, Mavis, but it's not. You are on OBPAC to represent bike shop owners, and so I would like to say that I, for one, support any sort of funding regarding e-bikes to also go to bike shops, especially the ones that are the only one in town in these small towns. They serve a service, and I would love to see you guys financially supported these small mom and pop ones. I know we can't designate which ones get the money, but we can definitely designate or support small mom and pop bike shops, and the only ones in town to apply for grants if Amanda would be able to kind of provide grants or some sort of funding.
And I'm looking at the list of everybody on there that can apply for this grant, which is great, but it doesn't include me. So because I make money, I mean, I am here, it is my job to fix bikes and get them out so people can use them. It is my job. And all these people would come to me and they'd be like, isn't this great? We have this fleet. Would you like to volunteer your time to fix this fleet for us? And like, part of me really wants to say yes, but one, if I haven't put all that money into my infrastructure already, it's not something I will physically be able to do, because my guys really do get hurt. Like I have really strong guys and they are tweaking their backs all the time working on these things, right? And then, yeah, it's a real disconnect. And
well,
yay.
Yeah, I appreciate, thank you for flagging that and bringing that up. I will say, I mean, I think it's helpful feedback for us to know as we're working on the development of the grants, but I do know of a couple of projects that we've had where the grant went to like a nonprofit here in the area, where they then paid for community cycling center mechanics to do work. So that it's not that you're expected to be doing that for free. That time is paid for and valued, and that is important.
Thank you. We're running out of your time. You're supposed to be done at 55. So anybody else?
Okay.
And we'll be hearing from you this summer?
Yes, this summer I will have a lot more to share. I can provide updates on lending libraries, and also just the innovative mobility program as a whole.
Great. Can we find more information by going to this Google Power to the Pedal Tiger or stuff like that?
Yeah, I hyperlinked in all of the
I noticed
slides, but I'll go ahead and drop them in the chat now too while y'all are still meeting.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
Good
you,
to see you all.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to our work program update. Whew. So last meeting, we went through and we had a big conversation about what we really want to focus on and what hasn't been done with this document as of late. And from my take, when I look at it, what I really look at and I go, okay, so it's a great work plan. A lot of it has been done. A lot of it, parts of it need removed because they have been done, and like the sunset is over, like the stuff with the bike bill. And we have moved on past that. And I just encourage everybody to look at this and say, okay, so what do we really want to do and how do we want to get there? So between last time we met and this time, Leanne and a couple other individuals took a look at this and revamped it a little bit, and they had some questions for us, and they also had some suggestions. So is there any way that we can, do you guys have this where you can pull it up and look at it? I personally, I have to have like 3 screens up to look at it, but
I'd like to
maybe
put up
Leanne,
on the
if you could
screen.
if you put a link to it in the chat, Leanne, that might be a great start. So anyway, I've only got 5 minutes for this, so I'm just kind of gonna roll over it as fast as I can, and you guys can tell me yay or nay whether you agree or not with the work plan idea. So Leanne put a couple questions down at the bottom. One of the areas is funding priorities. I suggest that we keep funding priorities. Leanne has suggested that we roll safety into this as well. A lot of these, they are very doable. They have this is things like the STIP, the Great Streets, and the community paths. They all fall under this, where we're trying to secure money for projects. And I think personally, I think that this is an incredibly important measurable thing that we can do. So I suggest that we are keeping that. Next on my list of things, leadership, support, and education. The idea around this was that we would have a support network for people to come to for education and questions about biking and walking. From my opinion, this was a great effort, but I don't think it's necessarily where we need to go as this committee. It is something that I want to be able to give everybody the answers, but the reality of it is we don't have the time or capacity. So instead of setting up, trying to be everything to everybody, I think we really need to focus on making sure that we have paid advocacy at the table. So like for this MAC group and stuff, we need to make sure that somebody is being paid to be there. You know, somebody within ODOT needs to be representing the bike and pedestrians. I think that is a good use of our time and making sure that is happening over trying to mobilize all the cyclists in Oregon to come to all these meetings and have their voice heard, because the reality of it is we're a really small committee without without a great way of getting everybody together. So my take on this whole thing is that we need to focus on making sure that ODOT is stepping up, that they are hiring for the positions that they that have been vacant. They hired for one now, which is great. And all the policies that we are spending our time on, we need to make sure that those are being put through to design to specifications, and that for the follow-up and like that we can do this. How are we doing? There's audits, and I suggest that those be what we are bringing to the table to say, okay, this audit said that this needed to happen and it didn't happen. So why didn't it happen? And that's kind of what we've been going through with the MAC, which isn't necessarily a great place to be, but it is where I think we need to be, where we're making sure that ODOT as a system is working and functional. Okay. So the questions at the end that Leanne came up with us, and I've kind of rambled on through them already, but to retouch base, the notes are, what is it that OBPAC wants to achieve? More funding, what can they do? How do we enable ODOT to do that? I just outlined what I think we can do to make that happen. And the change in focus areas and funding are part of that. So I said, basically, I think we should do, Leanne has reworked this. We are getting rid of everything that is not quantitative. And we are adjusting a few things per those questions.
Can I provide a little bit more
yes, please.
context?
Please do, jump in.
So based on your notes from the last meeting, Roberto and I worked to update Amanda and I actually, it was a very big team effort to try to provide some recommendations for how to edit your current work plan that would sort of lead you into the next 2 years, taking into account the things we heard at your at the meeting and the sticky notes that you provided. So if you go to the link that I provided and go to the third tab, that's like the clean version that doesn't include the crossed out stuff. And like, this is the new wording and this is the old wording. And there were some kind of big shifts that we made if you just look at that clean version and you don't look at the iterations of the edits. And this was a request from your co-chairs to be like, hey, can you just create a clean version so we can just see what the end result would look like if this is the direction we want to go. So that's sort of the idea behind that clean version, tab number 3, if you're looking at it right now. Some of the big changes that we made were that we eliminated a whole section that was around organizing people. We started taking out anything that didn't really have an outcome that we could measure. And we started kind of adding in some things that we thought would help, like informational presentations or moments in time where it's like, these are the programs we know y'all are interested in. Like, we could create a schedule for like a staff member to come and talk about where we are in that program and ask for recommendations on the sort of the next step for that program. So I came up with 3 questions and included them in an email to you all when we sent out the agenda, and I'm going to put them in the chat right now. One was around that first big thing that we did, was we took out a whole section about organizing people and working with BPACs around the state to identify challenges, and that's a pretty big body of work without sort of a deliverable that we could tangibly pull it back to. And so my question is, does ODOT want to continue developing that network of people, knowing that it's not, does OBPAC want to continue developing that network of people, acknowledging that that's not really a goal right now of ODOT, so that's sort of a separate thing that y'all would be doing. It could potentially help you advise ODOT on stuff because you'd have sort of that ground knowledge. However, ODOT is really trying to create a network of infrastructure. So that was sort of my question. Is like, do you still want to focus on developing a network of people, or do you want to shift that goal to like, hey, we want to develop a network of infrastructure? And then some of the tools that you might use might be a little bit different than developing that network of people. The second question is sort of, what does OBPAC need from staff to feel prepared to advise ODOT on funding decisions? Like, one of the things that came out of your sticky notes was like, we want to advise ODOT on funding decisions. And when those happen, ODOT staff from all the different levels generally will bring it to OBPAC. It's usually in regard to the statewide transportation improvement program. If ODOT's involved in a funding package, there'll be some intersection there. And my question for you all is, what do you need to feel prepared to make those recommendations? So we can start prepping you all by providing that information, providing presentations, or if you have, I know this is a new group, so I don't want to assume, and I want to be able, me as a staffer, I want to be able to provide you with what you need. And then the third question, and then we'll start back over at the beginning and we can discuss each of them. And we have until, I think, 3:35. So we have a pretty good, or 3:25, we have the time for discussion. The third one is, does OBPAC support updating the work plan to have SMART goals? And SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So staff, as we were looking through the work plan, we're like, oh, there are a lot of things in here that there's no way to measure if we're doing it, if we're not doing it. And so our recommendation was to take a lot of those things out, but I didn't want you to look at your work plan and be like, hey, a bunch of stuff is taken out. So we are wondering if you do want us to head that direction, we could take things out, or we could rework it to be more of a SMART goal. So those are the three main questions that staff has for how to help your co-chairs finish up your work plan. If we have guidance on those three things, we think that we can probably do it. So Mavis, my hope was that we could discuss those three questions here. Does that sound about right, or am I way off base?
That sounds fantastic. So, Dave, you have something to say.
I think Beth actually beat me to it, but I'll go first. So on the SMART goals, I generally believe in SMART goals for things that are kind of one time. There's something that you do, you're done, you measure it, you go on to the next thing. But there are things that I think that OBPAC probably needs to do. There's certainly things that my BPAC does that are just kind of ongoing services that we provide that are really not very measurable, but we still think they're important. So I don't know that we want to throw out everything that we can't measure. There may be some special things that we want to include anyway, but so that's
Do you have a specific when you look at the document?
To be honest, I don't for you. I don't in this document right now, but I was thinking in terms of RBPAC. One of our things that we really feel we're good at is keeping all of the transportation planners across Deschutes County on the same page in terms of what's working, what's happening, getting ideas exchanged. And it's really hard to measure that, right? But it's really important, we think. So I will leave it to others to decide if there's anything like that we don't want to throw out just because it's not measurable, but that's just my thoughts. And my other comment was on the communication stuff. I was on the BPAC side when you guys were putting a lot of work into reaching out through the acts and talking to people. We talked about it in my BPAC meeting. And to be honest, the sense from our BPAC meeting was what we need OBPAC to do is get us more money. We don't know how you can help us on our local stuff, but the more money we have, the more progress we can make on our local stuff. So from that point of view, and other BPACs may feel totally different, but from that point of view, I'd rather we spend our time trying to figure out how to get the state and ODOT to commit more resources to bike ped and, you know, not try and be a giant information resource for the BPACs around the state. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Beth?
Okay, since Dave ended with that one, I'll start with that one. Yeah, Andre and I are the remaining people who worked on that. I feel we are limited, and I'd love Andre's opinion too, is that connection to local bike ped organizations is a little beyond our normal scope of work. And I like the idea of setting up infrastructure so that that's our power source rather than local bike ped groups. I know we put a lot of effort into asking what they needed and all, and I hate for that effort to go to waste. So we still have it in our info repository, but I think at this time, unless and until we get more members, have a larger bike ped group, we should just put that on the back burner for this fiscal year. Another version is to just do a simplified version of some sort of just having a Q&A, an online Q&A that, you know, ask OBPAC or something like that, that we respond to as a group or as individuals. But then again, we don't have the manpower. We're all volunteers and we're stressed out as it is. I believe everybody's doing to the best of their ability. So I vote for that one to go to infrastructure, not the people support. Second question you had, Leanne,
Oh,
I
wait.
just wrote down.
Can we pause before we move on to the second one, because Nolan has his hand up.
I just wanted to say I totally agree with you, Beth. I think that we should move towards doing more infrastructure stuff. And I also believe, you know, if we have an issue where we need to build our network for our goals, I think it's more efficient that we focus on the infrastructure, and then, oh, let's say we need to talk to this person to do this, then we talk to that person, and we don't willy-nilly talk to 10 people trying to build our network and then change to infrastructure down the line, and then we just wasted 9 people's time trying to, you know, connect with them. And then I also totally agree with Dave about the SMART goals, and I think SMART goals are really important, but I also think a lot of the stuff we do is immeasurable, and so it would be really hard. I feel like it kind of gets rid of a lot of the important stuff just because we can't measure it, but it's still something we should focus on.
I'm going to put you on the spot, though. Is there a specific thing in this document that, with the clean reversion that we pulled out, that you really want to keep, that was pulled out because it was a SMART goal?
I guess it was more just like reading through like the metrics column. It's like a lot of these aren't numerically measurable, or I guess they can be like yes, no, we did or did not. Oh, I don't know. There's like stuff about feeling informed, but it's like, how can you tell if us as a group are feeling well informed about stuff? You can't really measure that, and we might just be wasting a lot of time doing more and more presentations when everyone is feeling informed already or able to judge.
Okay.
I'll look into it right now.
Thank you for the input. Okay, Beth, back to you.
Okay, going to the second item, I just wrote, I feel that the system is working. So I guess, what was the question, Leanne?
What do you need anything else to feel prepared to make funding recommendations? Is there any?
So my answer would be no. I feel like we get a lot of good information from ODOT. The system is working. So I'll just leave it at that, in my opinion. And the number 3, I like the SMART goals idea for a work plan. Now we have overall, don't we have a kind of a document that says what we overall do? I'm forgetting the word for it. A charter, something like that.
Yes, we have a charter. This is our work plan. What
Got it.
specifically?
That's what I'm saying.
Leanne, these are the things that we want you to help us check off. That's what this document.
The charter is doing the job of our overall goals, and our work plan is and should be, I think, only measurable, SMART goals. It's just year to year, isn't it? This is our.
I think it's every 2 years.
Okay.
I believe it's every 2 years that you guys create a work plan.
Okay, 2 years. So I think that works, and visiting it every 2 years is work. So that's my opinion. I think I like the SMART goals idea.
Y'all have bylaws and you have a vision, mission, and roles document.
There you go. That's, yeah.
And I can give an example of something that's hard to measure. It's mode share. Like, very hard to measure. Like, I don't know, like if you're like, we want to increase the people walking and biking in the state of Oregon, I would say like that's a great goal. And I think you could come up with tasks to help lead you to that goal. But if the tasks need to be tied to bike and ped counts, that would be really difficult. There are other ways that you could measure, that you could try. There are other tasks that you could do to try to increase mode share that wouldn't require that data set, because that's just not one that we have. And also another action in there could be like help get the data set. That's a pretty big piece that would. Anyway, so those are some ideas of like what is hard to measure. Mode split. What I mean by that is how many people on any particular day are walking in Oregon, and where are they walking? How many people are biking? We can do transit. So if you want that data, that's what we have. That's the one we have.
Yeah. I like keeping our overall goals, definitely, even if they are vague. They're important goals, and that keeps us in line. And when people join us, they do it because they support those goals and they want to do it in a meaningful way. And I think the task list is the way that we can do it on a 2-year basis. That's all I have to say.
Emma, do you have anything to add to this conversation? We'll just throw it out there. This is one of your babies. So, and we have taken the baby and like washed it around the dishwasher. So
maturing, growth, and different iterations is good and healthy. I think that it is time to move away from developing a network of people. I agree with the sentiment we're hearing on that. I think that it did serve a purpose. I mean, we have 39 people who just applied for OBPAC, and I think that more people across the state know that we exist as a committee. I think right now I'm attributing more of that to ODOT improving some of its communication channels, like the e-newsletter around walking and biking. So some of the things that the agency is doing and specific outreach related to recruitment, I think is achieving some of those outcomes to, one, make sure that we are known as a committee and that people know that they have the opportunity to apply and participate. Two, that we are networked enough to fill positions and make sure that there are active transportation representatives on the ACTS, on the MAC, on other committees. To the point of, do we do SMART goals or not? I think it's helpful to have a focused work plan that has clear initiatives that can be accomplished and checked off. I think that our other documents speak to our roles and purpose as a committee, but it might be beneficial to add some of the ongoing items to those documents because there has been so much staff and committee transition. So to have a list of, here are all the committees at the state level that OBPAC either serves on directly or appoints people to serve on. It'd be nice to have that in our core committee documents somewhere. some of the committee practices, like, not tolerating hateful speech in our meetings. I want to have those things documented. I don't know that our work plan needs to be the place for those, but there might be a gap between what we have in our charter and our bylaws and what we'd put on in a work plan if we cut out all the non-SMART goal related items. So I just want to make sure that that gap is filled if we are going to remove some of those ongoing items. So there's the institutional knowledge, and we as a committee can continue to have the ongoing impacts of serving on other state committees and having those cross-pollinated conversations and policy through lines. And then on the second question of what does OBPAC need, I think ODOT does a great job bringing us information. I think with today's meeting about Oregon Community Paths, a little bit more context can sometimes be helpful. If a program has been in place, just bringing forward the numbers of where are we at in time and space? Is there a bulge in the system because of something we previously funded? How does the current funding apply to history and what we expect in the future? But generally, I think that we do a good job, and that's where we can have some of the biggest impact. To Dave's point, we're a state committee. Let's get more dollars flowing to walking and biking, and that's really going to help out the locals.
Wonderful. So I am proposing that this become our new document. In that the next meeting we will be come to the next meeting, which is in person, ready to put your name down on one of these. There are the subcommittees like the Safe Routes to School and some of those others. We need to make sure that those things are getting covered. Since we have become more seeable within ODOT itself, we are getting asked to be on a lot of different committees, and we need to make sure that it's not just one or two people doing the lion's share. We need to kind of like, okay, this is what the list is. We need to fill it in and kind of approach that. And I think that is part of our next meeting. So having said that,
the in-person meeting is actually July. So the next meeting will be online. The May meeting will be online.
Apologies. That's also when we get a new chair. So get ready for somebody to step in.
Please. I forgot to lower my hand and now I'm raising it again. Mavis, could we hear from Andre and Dell? We have until 3:35, correct?
Correct.
Could we, I'd like to hear what you guys think of the work plan. One of you? Andre.
I'm up. Okay. Yeah, thanks for all the work on the work plan. I know it's a extensive document. I'm feeling good about it. I guess I'm just going to go through these questions. I'll start there. I think the work we did developing network was really important, but I think we did what we needed to do and we learned. I think my interest is having a semi-static network that we can tap into when we're trying to be swift on something very strategic. So, periodic communication to a group that is interested in what we're doing as needed. I think it would be really cool to maybe have some type of annual gathering just to be around folks, if that's possible. So something to consider there, but I know that takes work and money and planning, and so it is what it is. I do feel fairly definitely well supported by staff on basically everything that comes to us. I do have some individual questions about policy recommendations. I think that we are a little under involved in putting out policy recommendations. I actually have written down a couple things that I would be. First, I'm curious if we can do that, if there's things that we can share. I would like to get some clarity on how OBPAC can have a discussion on a topic area and then, propose a written policy statement that we could submit to ODOT staff or the OTC or whoever we need to, as well as tap into that static network of BPACs across the state to potentially sign on to what we're saying. And then I'm actually a huge proponent of SMART goals. Absolutely. I think there's things that we can do that are not as measurable, but I don't think non-measurable things should be included in our work plan. I think a work plan should be full of fully measurable things. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do the things. I just think for a work plan, the things should be measurable. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I guess I'm on next. The stuff about the local bike ped committees, that was one of my interesting goals was to try to get more involved in that. But the more we did, I realized that it's way too much work for 1 or 2 people to do. I think it is important to have some sort of a forum. You know, if we had just a message board or something, that might help, or a newsletter. I know I'm on the Clackamas County one, and I know Dave's on the Bend one, and or is it Deschutes County, one or the other? And it's very interesting to know what these other people are doing, and it can sometimes save you a lot of investigative work if you can just pass on what you've learned. But I don't think that's a task that OBPAC can do. But I think we could set up some sort of a forum that would expedite this. And I agree with Andre that having like an annual forum would be outstanding. Beth has her hand up.
Do you, okay, since we're on this subject, I would be happy to, if I'm not co-chair, to be just one person who kind of works with ODOT staff on improving our outreach in general, such as making the OBPAC website be almost interactive, but Q&A. I'd be happy to talk to OBPAC people and the rest of the I'm sorry, ODOT people and the rest of OBPAC about having an annual thing. I'm thinking it probably should be at the same time as either one of our in location meetings or at the annual, help me out here, Andre.
Oregon Active Transportation Summit.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
So I guess I could be in that role, kind of a one person who could do it until we get maybe more people on board. So that I'm just adding that. So we'll just leave that be. And Del, what else? Any other comments?
No, I think down to point 3 about measurable goals, that's such a, I mean, so many goals are hard or impossibly measured, and I don't really have a lot of opinion on that. I agree that putting stuff like that on the work plan would be difficult just because they're not measurable. And as far as point 2, I think that in these meetings especially, we get incredibly good help from the ODOT staff. I know that outside of these meetings, some of the bicycle groups don't get much cooperation from ODOT. It's maybe partly because we don't know who to talk to. And I think ODOT's main mission doesn't emphasize bicycles and pedestrians as much as we would like them to. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about that as a committee, but that's my 2 cents.
Dave's hand is up.
Yeah, just a couple of follow-ups after listening to people throw out some really good ideas. I'm all for not putting things that don't have measurables in the work plan. As long as they're documented in our processes, I understand the difference between a work plan better now, the difference between a work plan item and just our responsibilities, I guess. Second thing is, somebody made a really good comment earlier about rather than us trying to do everything, we need to get ODOT paid staff to be doing it. And at least in Region 4, our active transportation liaison is the person to talk to if you're a BPAC or another group that's trying to find out something about how to do things with an ODOT or what ODOT is doing about something. I'm wondering if we could get them tasked with talking about OBPAC as a place to go with kind of high level issues about how funding works, or, why grant proposals aren't, getting approved or whatever. They should go through their active transportation liaison to try and get answers. But, if the liaisons can say, hey, do you guys know about OBPAC? And if you want to influence how the state is doing things, you might want to reach out to these people. That might get us some contacts that, without us having to go out and make them all individually. And I don't know about active transportation liaisons in other regions, but ours is really helpful.
I really like that, Dave. I feel like providing a little bit more information, since folks are kind of new or new-ish to OBPAC, might be really helpful at this point. Which is that, oh my gosh, now I can't remember exactly. I had a whole stream of thought around this, and that was really relevant. I do think that active transportation liaisons are ODOT's kind of ear to the ground in their regions. I think that this committee could learn about what's going on in the regions by inviting an active transportation liaison to come to an OBPAC meeting and say, like, hey, what are the challenges that you're hearing about in your region? I think that's one way that you can learn. And I think that what Dave said is correct. Like, our ATLs know what the challenges for locals are, and they also know what the challenges for locals on ODOT right of way are, which is kind of where like ODOT, like a lot of the stuff that we talk about besides the grants is ODOT's business is ODOT right of way. The second thing is that we do have a Gov delivery list Gov delivery is like the communication tool that ODOT uses. People can sign up for it. They can say, I'm interested in OBPAC, I'm interested in bike ped, and that's how we send out announcements about meetings. And it goes out to several thousand people in the state. And we could look at doing like a message from the OBPAC chairs. Like, it would be reviewed by ODOT communications. Like, you wouldn't be able to like rally the troops, but it would be a way to invite people to something. And the third thing I wanted to say is like using things that are already existing. Like we said before, staff capacity is super limited. And even when we rehire for those positions, unless it's something that it's ODOT's goal too, it's going to be really hard to get the staff support that I think you want to organize people. And it's not necessarily ODOT staff responsibility to organize people, unless we're doing outreach around a specific project or specific plan. And in that way, we generally, anyway, we can go into that in another time, but we do have these opportunities like OATS, the Oregon Active Transportation Summit. I'm sorry, I hate it when you call it OATS, the Oregon Active Transportation Summit, where OBPAC could put in a proposal to say meet and greet with OBPAC. Like, that's something that is already existing, and all the communication would happen outside of that, and like there are easier ways than OBPAC organizing your standalone event. So those were all the things I was going to say. Oh, the third kind of easy option would be like, hey, we are going to be in Corvallis in July. Like we could do like a note from the OBPAC chairs. Hey, we're going to be in Corvallis in July. We're going to be here at 5 o'clock. Come meet your OBPAC members. I used to do that all the time as a ODOT staffer. If I was going to a certain place talking about safe routes to school, I could say like, hey, here's where I'm gonna, here's a place that I'm gonna be at this office at this time. Come by and meet. So there are easy ways that we can get at some of these things without spending a whole lot of time. I talked way too long, but I do actually think there's more room for discussion. Then I don't think that you guys can just say like, okay, ODOT staff, now go and update our work plan based on this conversation. Like I kind of need someone from OBPAC to update your work plan. And I don't know exactly how y'all want to do that, if that makes sense. I think I need a little more member support. The back and forth of me trying to like interpret based on what folks say into your work plan, which is real specific to you all, like the work that y'all want to do, unless it's something that I know ODOT's going to do anyway. And it's a difficult spot for me to be in.
Okay, so we are out of time. So I think, as requested by Leanne, that we should put a committee on this. They will bring a work plan ready for us. They will give us a week or so before our next meeting to kind of look it over. And at our July meeting, we will be putting our names on the line that says, I will be taking care of this thing. Does that sound amendable to everybody?
I like calling it a task force.
Thumbs up,
so
thumbs down.
That's all
Let's
they
see.
do.
Okay, it looks like people are okay with that process. Now we need a committee that is going to do that. I would like at least 3 people. Anybody think that they can tackle taking this and cleaning it up?
I think Nolan wants to.
I don't want to do it.
It looks like Dave and I will tackle it, and I would love one more set of eyes on this fine fricassee of fun.
I'm happy to contribute.
Oh, Andre, thank you so much. Please make it in the notes. We will get together. Andre, are you good with the whole like reaching out and doodling everybody to figure out times and places?
I can be, absolutely. I have some experience
Can you
coordinating
take that
folks.
under your belt? Yeah,
Yes.
can you coordinate us to have like a Zoom on this?
Yes, and this is you, myself, and Dave.
Yes, please.
Okay, consider it done.
And Mavis, we're seeing interest from Kathy.
Thank you so much, sir. Kathy had a question.
Yeah.
Do we have any answers?
Not a question, just wanted to know what my level of participation is at this point.
I think that if OBPAC members would like Kathy's help in creating this work plan, that is totally fine, whether Kathy is an official OBPAC member yet or not. Just as in OBPAC can request any public person can help support you all in work that you're doing. I think it's fine that if y'all want Kathy, especially since we're in kind of a process of adding new members, and we spoke to folks via email about this, but Kathy is one of our prospective new members that we're doing now the uphill slog of doing all the back end work to get to our final result.
So Andre, do you have Kathy's email or do you need somebody to get it to you?
If it was CC'd at one point, I have it, but yeah, happy to
I can send, I can connect Kathy and Andre.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That is a perfect segue for Beth, who once again has left her desk only when I tell her name. She's going to talk a little bit about our recruitment and the wonderfulness. Oh, there she is. Wonderful. So she's going to take over now. You've got not much time. Go.
Okay. I lost the sound at my computer. So I want to introduce Kathy Rigby, we have asked the governor to appoint her. And so we're hoping that, well, anyway, we're just happy to have her. The other person is Carrie Robison, and she's not here that I can tell. And can you see? I can't see what they're seeing. Let me go get my notes. I have a couple notes, just a minute.
And just to remind everybody that unfortunately all of our decisions are not final until all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and there is a significant number of bureaucratic hoops to jump through before we can get to the end of this. So right now, Kathy is a very interested party and a prospect in our recruitment. And thank you so much for your interest, Kathy. It's really nice to see you.
Okay. All right. So I'm using her computer. Sorry, everybody. So David Nolan and I found 4 wonderful people, actually. Let's see here. I have okay. I'll just read this because this is important to me. Other ODOT advisory committees. Oh wait, let's see. Over the last few months, we listened to OBPAC regarding recruitment, updated our interest questionnaire, considered 39 applicants, decided on 8 finalists, interviewed 7 people, found 4 people who would significantly add to OBPAC's intelligence, capabilities, and breadth of experience. We decided on 2 people to fill these existing openings, and then we started thinking more about the ex officio position, what it means, can we add more, etc. And that just kind of opened up a whole can of worms. And David Nolan, jump in anytime if you wish to. Okay, good. Other ODOT advisory committees, they're not always governor appointed, have many more people on them. So it's kind of a 2-parter. We'd like to know if OBPAC wants to open up 2 more ex officio positions, because we have really wonderful people who we don't want to lose, frankly. And based on how much work we have to do, I would recommend it. I think Dave and Nolan might as well, that we offer these 2 people ex officio positions. So that's one question for OBPAC. Another one is that the can of worms is, do we want to have these eventually be regular members? And if so, that is a legislative decision. And so does OBPAC want to pursue that? And I'm also, another question I have for OBPAC is, let's see. I would suggest a task force, creating a task force to look into this, like to answer the questions. I had a list of questions. Oh no.
Is it the list of questions from the email?
Yeah, I did. 4 questions or 3?
I can read it if.
Please, Nolan.
So we had, what should we call the ex officio term? Because right now, we're not really sure ex officio really applies to what the actual position is of the non-voting party. And then what should the term length be for those members? In our bylaws, you know, a normal voting member has a term of 4 years. So should it be the same as 4 years, or should it be shorter? Any thoughts there? And then we're talking about the transition of those people into voting positions. We can't really, Dave can talk more about this because he's in the situation, but we can't really promise them any voting position. But also, you know, you'd think they're probably the best candidate at the time to replace someone who leaves. So talking about how that's going to be organized. And then once again, talking about the 2 extra parties that we have that we think are really good fits, and whether or not we should open more positions for them.
Right. So that's more of the task force question, the can of worms questions that Dave and Nolan and I tried to kind of address in emails exchanged to each other, but it just seems like that's separate from the recruitment task that we did already. And so we're kind of asking, what do you guys think? Should we create a task force to make recommendations to OBPAC at a later meeting? Or another option is to make all those decisions right now, which I don't think we're going to do. Any thoughts? Lots of thoughts.
My thought is that we have tried to add people. Yeah. Lots of thoughts. We've tried to add people to our committee. That's why we have the ex officio, is because it wasn't going to happen in a timely manner in the slightest. And so this is how we have gone about getting help. And then my other is that we're pretty much out of time. I do understand that maybe we need to firm up the ex officio portion. And if you guys wanted to have a work task that just like deal with, okay, so we have these guys, we're going to put them in this is what we're going to call, we're going to like organize the rules around them. I think that's probably a good use of our time. But Emma, what are your thoughts?
I just want to update the committee that I'm looking at different things going on in my personal life, and I had talked at a previous meeting about potentially switching to ex officio. Given the amazing recruitment and thank you group who went through and did that extensive process, listened to the committee, I would like to move to have one of the 2 people who you couldn't appoint as a full voting member to take my position. I have an at-large position, so it's fully flexible. I don't know exactly, you know, what I'd be shifting to, but kind of downshifting my involvement in OBPAC given what's going on. And I also serve on the Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee, which meets tomorrow. So I think there's more to be figured out, but I am recommending that we as a committee recommend to appoint a 3rd person in this recruitment round, given we have this interest, and it seems like a natural segue and transition point.
I just want to say really quick, for Kathy, or not Kathy, sorry, I read your Beth and Dave. Honestly, I think for like continuity, we should probably be the task force that goes ahead and figures out those problems that we had outlined, because I know we're not going to solve them in the next 3 minutes or whatever. So how about, are you guys fine continuing I don't know how to pass this or like what to say, but do you get what I'm saying? I guess that was my question.
Mavis, you want to?
I would accept a motion that the task force continue outlining what the ex officio rules and expectations are, and that we go forward with 3 candidates instead of 2 in light of Emma's emanating withdrawal. Do I have a motion?
Oh, I got you. Can I second that, or I'll do the motion?
No, you have to make the motion because I can't, because I'm a chair.
Okay, I will make the motion that.
Perfect. Do I have a second for said motion?
Second.
Okay. Great.
I need Beth, do you have something to say?
I want I would like to open up so that we can have total 3 ex officio. One can be Emma and that 4th person and Dave. I mean, it doesn't matter who, but could we open up and have 2 more ex officio positions? Is OBPAC okay with that? I make
You
a
guys are
motion.
making the rules. I think you need to come up with your suggestions and bring them to us, and we can massage them later. Del?
Okay, well, let's go on Nolan's motion first, and then I'll do my motion.
Well, I think my motion already passed. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we need to vote on it.
Okay.
Del,
So
did you call for the question?
sorry, say that again.
Does Del have a question?
Does Del have a question?
Well, I was gonna say that when we nominated Dave to this ex officio position, I think there was some understanding then that he would step into a vacant position, and we have 1 or 2 vacant positions now, so I think he should be #1 priority and move up to that. And I also agree that some more ex officio members would be advantageous. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
I guess all I need to know right now for going forward, does anyone oppose having more ex officio positions for our future task force meetings?
I'm not opposed. I think I just want to make sure we have clarity on the roles of those positions, and as long as we have clear definitions, absolutely, I support it. But
okay.
Okay. So.
Are you still waiting for us? Are you still waiting for a second? I will do that.
No, I think at this point we kind of got sidetracked. So Roberto, can you read back the question? I call for the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what question.
Yeah, this has gotten a little bit muddled. I think we're trying to figure out a next step for ex officio, and a couple of things have come to light, which is that Emma is volunteering to switch to ex officio because we have a whole list of candidates that we just went through. So if we are going to replace Emma, now would be an easy time to do it. Did I get that right, Emma? Okay, so that we've heard that from Emma. We've also heard that there is a group of people that are willing to get together and talk a little bit more about the ex officio position. So I think those are 2 different pieces, because if you do want to replace Emma's position, if y'all want to decide that today, then that's kind of a separate piece. If you want to kind of task the ex officio group with figuring all of this out, I feel like you could potentially do that as well. And then that's where I think those are what I think are some of the options. But and it sounds like folks in general are okay with ex officio or whatever you want to call it, but want more clarity around it. So that leads us back to that task force. So we're going in circles a little bit. So I would say, yeah,
let's
someone
start with the
propose
task force. Somebody propose the task force that would outline the ex officio and their roles and their term limits.
Okay, I propose that the task force that was most recently what's it called when you hire people? Yeah, that group move forward as a task force, deciding on the outlines of ex officio and how many members in the ex officio position we have on OBPAC. Can I get a second?
I will second that.
And then can I make
All
that?
in favor? Let me see your thumbs. All opposed? Let me see your thumbs. Motion passes. Okay, now we need another motion to fill 3 instead of 2 vacancies. And Dave, your name keeps coming up. So as an this is one of the things I really want cleaned up with this group that you guys are getting together, because if we could just move you on to a voting member, that would be lovely. But I don't know if we've missed the boat at this point, or we need to wait for Leanne. Do you have any idea over this one?
I do think that if this committee votes to add another member and you had the name ready very soon, we could kind of loop it into the process that's already happening, because there's so many hoops to jump through, and actually more have been added since the last time we did this, that it's not very far along in the process yet. So it's possible that we could get another name in that, and then it could all happen at once, where we're adding 3 people instead of 2. Unknown for sure.
Dave, would you like us to move forward with that? Or are you happy being an ex aficionado?
I am happy either way. I'm happy to continue in my current role. I would certainly be happy to be a full member and be able to vote against some of the silly things you people seem to want to do. That was a joke.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
One point though, I want to have 3 total ex officio positions at this point, because I really want those other people to be somehow in OBPAC. Those 2 additional people who are wonderful, just like Kathy is. So
I feel like we voted for a task force to figure that out, but it sounds like Beth is bringing it back up to see if there actually is an appetite to approve that today. Is that what you're saying, Beth?
I think the task force has already kind of, from previous conversations, said
Okay, there's 3 minutes until our meeting is up.
Okay,
yeah.
So what I'm saying is I would like to make a motion for OBPAC to have 3 to have 3 ex officio positions total. And I think there's a time consideration, because otherwise we might or probably will lose those people.
I second that motion.
All those in favor, I need to see thumbs. All those opposed, I need to see a nay. All those opposed? Motion passes. Make it so.
Okay.
I have my hand up because I was just wondering, does the governor have to approve our appointments? Is this are we going through a lot of red tape here, and are we
not for ex officio? That's why OBPAC members are curious to explore this option. For ex officio members, you have a lot more, or whatever it's going to be called, you have a lot more leeway, because it's not legislated in law. It said that you only can have 8 members, and they're appointed by the governor. So this is a strategy to provide more support, or provide more people that can be engaged. And I didn't see everybody's thumb in that last vote, so I just want to make sure that Mavis did see them, but like for my purposes, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I feel like the process somehow got muddied a little bit, because I earlier had just asked for the task force to like have a discussion about the additional members and sort of bring that to our group, and then in the next motion it was to just approve the 3 additional members. And so it's just a procedural thing, and I'm totally fine with it, but I'm just putting that out there that sort of as a member of OBPAC, I made a request and it sounded like that was going to be honored.
I completely agree.
And the outcome was completely different like 3 minutes later. So it's no issue at all. It's all good, but I just wanted to put that on the record.
Yeah, and my tentative thumb was, I think we motioned and have said, yes, we want 3 ex officio, but we haven't decided who's in what position. So I think sending it to the task force for getting clarity on the positions would be good. We know that we want all the people, the 4 people the subcommittee is recommending or really wanting to have involved, and Dave and me involved, at least through next meeting, and the task force can figure out the details.
So I think the concern about, and the reason the motion came up to say we want to add these additional 2 right now is because of the concern that they might not be available once the, if the task force goes off to finalize all this stuff, it won't get approved till the next meeting, presumably. So there's going to be a long gap before we can offer these positions. But I think we might be able to offset that if Leanne, you or someone can talk to those 2 people and say, hey, here's where we are. We're working on this idea. We don't have anything to say right now, but we're definitely would like to keep you interested in, I don't know. That's a way.
We just voted to have 3 total at 3 total ex officio members.
I don't think we did.
No?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
We did. That's what the second
We did.
motion was.
I just didn't see everybody vote, but like there was a word that was like, okay, everybody voted, but I didn't actually see everybody vote. So that was why I'm bringing it up of like.
Well, I'm tending to agree with Andre here that there was a direction established, and then suddenly there was a vote taken to do something quite a bit different. And I think it's been pretty confusing here. I'm not sure
I think the reason it was confusing is because all of us who are on the subcommittee are under the understanding that we're under a huge time pressure to get these people hired or like on the board. And so we're trying to push it in this meeting so that, because we know that OBPAC has to vote on adding the ex officio positions as a whole and not just our subcommittee. So we're trying to push it through so that we can get them before the next meeting. And that's what happened.
But the task force hasn't even finished the definition of what ex officio is going to look like exactly. And we're saying, which is fine. You brought me on board without any definition of what I was going to do, but.
I think that we might not want to let the timeline be the enemy of like the cohesiveness of this group. And I agree that like we might lose a couple people, but that's going to be okay. We might not. And what Dave mentioned was just sort of like trying to communicate out to that group of like being a little bit high level, but saying like, hey, we're working on a way to involve more voices. Y'all were really great candidates. I'll keep you informed over the next 2 months. You're always welcome to join OBPAC as a community member and learn more about the committee during this time. There's ways to say that lets them know like we're working on something while still honoring like not rushing this committee and really working to build the trust and cohesion of this group. So that's probably what my recommendation would be. Like I feel the urgency of the timing too, but
so
not to
as a point of motion, I would like to withdraw that. I would like maybe withdraw that motion that we just voted on to have additional members.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have members that we can take to the governor's office now?
Yes, 2.
Okay.
And Kathy's one of them.
And do we need to have a conversation and a motion to make that happen?
No, that's happening.
No. Okay, so those are moving on. So we have established a task force that is going to get together and come up with a definition for the aficionados. They will be coming back next meeting, which brings us to our next thing, which is we're going to skip everything except for the agenda build. So on our agenda build, that group is going to report back. All right. Am I missing any nuances of this conversation?
I want to point that Emma also mentioned that she's interested in maybe, or I don't know if the decision has been made to move to ex officio, but just sort of keeping in the back of people's minds that you will have an opening coming up soon. I don't know if y'all are in a space to be like, yes, let's add the next person on the list, or if you want to task it with that subcommittee as well to talk through that issue. But that's the other outstanding thing that hasn't been wrapped up yet. But also, Emma, maybe having another couple of months before that happens is okay. Like, I just want to point out that we haven't really wrapped that one up yet.
I am flexible. I want to support the committee and support myself. So I don't think it makes sense to do a whole nother recruitment cycle and put in a whole lot of time and energy and extra meetings when we have great candidates. But I'm totally flexible as to how a future transition comes about. I just wanted to voice it to the committee so it doesn't come out of the blue when, you know, we're concluded with the recruitment session and then it's like, oh wait, now we have to do another filling of a position. We don't want that again.
So do we have a position that do we have a person that we could just go ahead and slip into Emma's?
Well, it sounds like there were 4 top candidates and 2 are already recommended for approval. So I think, oh, hello. Taking that back, Marty. I think that's something that the task force could look at, is defining, and then out of the candidates who are in this recruitment cycle, like what to recommend and propose as a way of conserving energy and getting to the end goal, but not deciding now.
You all did previously give the subcommittee the authority to recommend those members. If you did that again for this same subcommittee, to give them the authority to like recommend a new member, they could do that in between meetings. The only step that would come back here would be that they would email you their recommendation before they send it officially to ODOT. You could do that. I think that could be done.
Okay.
Does everybody feel comfortable with that suggestion? Andre?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine with that as long as the definition is created, and the term length is created, and the process. I mean, it sounds like that is the process, and I think we feel good about how this process went. So
that's actually a different thing that I'm asking. Like, that's going to happen. They're doing that. But Emma would like to recuse herself from the committee since we're right in the middle of bringing a lot of people on. And we would like to fill that position.
great. That sounds good. Sorry, my internet seems to be going slow. So
Yeah, I hope you wouldn't run away from me. So do we need a motion to make it so that our committee can add one more person to that list so that we can replace Emma?
No, we don't need to.
I thought we just did that.
Okay, I guess so. So moving on, agenda build. We're going to go over the ex aficionado, the definition, term limits, all that good stuff. That's going to be coming through next meeting. What else we got, Leanne?
We have, so let's see, discussion. We have the only other thing that I've seen come down through my email is there's an annual report about crossings out that I know the staffer who pulled that together is happy to come and provide more information. It would be like an information building for crossing policy at street crossing policy on ODOT right of way. But I don't have a full list of other things. If the work plan that we've kind of drafted is starting, it looks about right, I could look through there and start looking for like what other things that y'all want to work on, or we can if y'all have any other topics that you're interested in learning more about, we can.
I know that there was a bike ped audit that was going on. Has that been completed yet so that we can talk about it?
Yeah, there's not a public thing to share yet, but maybe by May, I'll keep an eye on it. And that's
okay,
an
and then
internal,
the other one,
not by the Secretary of State, but there's like an internal ODOT audit going on around.
Yeah, and then the other thing I had on my list was that the bike ped had just been moved to, they moved it within ODOT to Metro. Where did we go? The bike ped, we had a group, and then they took it and they put it in with the trains, planes, and automobiles.
I'm not tracking with what you're putting down.
So they had the bike and ped group, and then they took all the
Can you say
funding
more about
and they
that?
took it. They had the bike ped, ODOT had a bike and ped group, and then they moved it into not the Metro, but in with the buses and everything.
People funding.
And I just wanted to know how that transition went.
Yeah,
It's funding, people and funding, from what I understood.
Are you talking about the reorg?
Maybe not.
Maybe you and I can talk offline about this.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to know how what transition was going and if it was smooth and effective.
I think we can definitely do a presentation on the reorg. This happened like 4 years ago. Are you talking about when the ped bike folks moved from the planning division to the public transportation division?
That's it right there. Okay. Sorry.
Reorg update.
I was trying to make it come out.
The Safe Routes to School solicitation is happening. They could come and do an update, but I don't know if there's like a discussion topic there. I'm trying to like focus in on things that I know there's room for. There's a space for feedback and there's an opportunity to provide good comments on things. And so we could ask if for an update, but I'm not sure if there's a discussion topic there yet.
Is there anything else that people are dealing with, like maybe Andre or Emma, that you're really seeing that you think we need to be paying attention to, that we would like to know more about?
I'm curious if I wasn't here in January, so if I missed what happened with kind of the rapid response and the pedestrian bicycle safety analysis work that Jessica was doing. I know she's left ODOT. Is there any loop to close on either of those topics?
I know that Gary Obery, it's called vulnerable road user something. It's got a different name than rapid response. I could bring him back in to do an update and you guys could ask questions. But I don't know. I think that a lot of the decisions were already y'all's input was taken during the formation of that program through Jessica. And we could sort of just ask him for an update on that program. If that's something that y'all want to hear more about.
I want to hear it. Update on the vulnerable road users proposal they had.
It's an actual, yeah. That I'm showing my ignorance of like Gary Obery's running that. So let me do a little bit of digging to see what information is shareable and where we could provide more where we could seek OBPAC's advice for that program. We could prep for the co-chair, the new co-chair vote. We could gather nominations and discuss if anyone has any questions about that role.
And then Andre had something to say.
Yeah, I just had a couple of topics I'm interested in discussing with folks. The first would be OBPAC having a discussion around people under 16 operating Class 1 e-bikes. I think it's a discussion worthy for us to have and maybe put a position forward. And I would also like us to potentially have a discussion surrounding the allowance of operating Class 1 e-bikes, now that we have a definition, on sidewalks as well.
Is that something, Leanne, that we can be effective with?
I think that if y'all want to discuss how OBPAC feels about it, I feel like, or the thoughts of OBPAC as a committee, just noting that OBPAC can definitely write recommendations to ODOT. However, like, since this was a basically, I don't know of a process where I could include your feedback right now, where I know that it would turn into something. However, coming up with your feedback is not a bad idea, because at some point there will be a process and it might be useful. But just so that you know that any recommendations that you guys make go to ODOT, not to the legislature. And it was a legislatively led bill. But I do think you could educate ODOT and write a letter saying, like, hey, this is what we know, and just sharing the information, you know, like, without a very specific ask, since I don't know ODOT's role yet in what that might look like. So that's my take on it, of like, I think that it would be a discussion.
Can you figure out a target for us to aim at with that after that conversation?
I mean, I think I'm telling you right now that I don't see a target, but if you come up with your opinion, there might be a target in the future, and then you've already got your comments ready, if that makes sense.
We will take that route then.
Yeah. Oh, Emma put in the chat. Yeah, letter to the OTC. Could also work, but again, like, it's not like something that is currently on their agenda that they've got a process where they're making a decision about it. It would be more just like an educational letter, I think, at this point, because I don't know what the ask would be, if that makes sense. But I think educating too.
Yeah, I think let's have the conversation and kind of give it weight, and then see where we can stick the information.
Right. I don't think there's any reason not to discuss it, to learn more about it, and to say, like, hey, do we have thoughts about this that we could help educate ODOT on it?
Okay. Is that enough? Is that
That's
too
more
much
than
for
enough,
our...
especially if we need to come back to the work plan next time. We'll probably have to whittle this down.
Okay. Is there any reason we can't adjourn, since we are 16 minutes over? Whew. Lovely to see you guys. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good to see you.